IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast, live here on a Monday, which of course means it's Notre Dame football mailbag ready to go. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks here, folks. Obviously, we have heard Notre Dame will be playing Oregon State in the Sun Bowl. That was announced yesterday. A little late on the announcement yesterday during the show, but you know it's the game that Notre Dame will be playing in the bowl game, which we're all excited about. We'll also be getting a lot of understanding over the next few days over who's going to the NFL, who's going to be sitting out, who's going to be playing in the bowl game. And then obviously we're less than 3 weeks as well from National Signing Day from the recruiting side of things. So it's going to be a busy
probably
few
have some
weeks.
more transfers jump in the portal as well.
Yeah.
So just some of them I think might still play in the game from what I was told. So I think there are some kids that might still play in the game and then jump in the portal afterwards. So we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be an interesting month, Ryan. We're going to be busy.
I was about to say the traffic on the site's going to be really good over the next few weeks at least. So.
Oh my gosh, it's been so I just had a long talk last night we had to hire an outside web developer to kind of look into all the issues we've been having, and part of it's we're just getting overloaded. But there's some things we did figure out. So I got the rough estimate on what it's going to cost. Yeah. Christmas is going to be a little lighter in the Driscoll household this year, that's for sure. But we're going to get it done because we have to have the site ready to handle all the craziness that's going to happen in the month of December. There's no doubt about it, Ryan.
It's such a weird feeling, isn't it, when like the site's going extra slow and such, because it's like it's annoying, but also that means that people are trying to get into the content. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So like it's very like bittersweet, I guess.
Yeah.
But
as soon as I see it, I'm like, okay, let me open up my mailbox because I know I have about 30 emails. Which, by the way, everyone that emails me when the site is slow, I do appreciate it because I know it's like it's for me. I'm being bombarded. Yeah. But it's like there's that one time that you think, well, everybody else must be having that problem, so you don't email me, and it's just a you problem, and I can't fix it. I can't address it. We can't get you squared away. So I do appreciate it. And but I promise we'll get all that stuff fixed. I say it's just going to take a little bit of time, but we are going to get it done. But there's no slowing down here in the mailbag, Ryan. No. We got a ton going on. So are you ready to rock and roll, man? You ready to start getting into these questions?
Yeah, man. If it's your first time with us, folks, just hit an MB before the question or just put a mailbag in front and ready to rock and roll, man.
Yeah, let's start off. We got a couple super chats to get us started off, all right?
Nice. We got PA Irish guy with a super chat. Thank you so much. With flip season upon us, are there any names to keep an eye on in or out of the class? Go Irish. Brian, I was talking about this the other day with someone. I'm like, it's kind of a laxed, last few weeks before signing day. Like,
there's not almost makes me nervous,
right?
Like something huge is going to happen. I know there's a lot of rumors about Kingston Viliama-Asa. We've talked to a lot of different people about this. Yep. I don't believe there's anything to it. I mean, sometimes kids keep relationships with prospects that they've met at other schools. Right. And that's just kind of the way that it goes. I mean, look, in recruiting these days, Ryan, I don't say anything is 100%. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if you'd have told me 6 months after Keon Keeley committed that he would decommit, I decided, you're nuts. That kid is as all Notre Dame is. And look, stuff happens. So nothing's guaranteed. We'll find out on signing. And I don't really believe anything 100% until they sign.
Yep.
But I mean, honestly, even that rumor, it's like, no, I mean, everything seems good, and so, and even people send me what the Ohio State people are saying, even they're saying like, it's unlikely, it's just like, well, he still talks to coaches. And I'm like, yeah, there's Notre Dame coaches that still talk to other players. And it's not because they necessarily think they're going to flip them. It's just like, we had a really good relationship. How you doing? You know what I mean?
Right. Being a good person is frowned upon in today's world for some reason.
I know. Right. And so, like, I remember, I won't say a name, but I mean, I've known Notre Dame coaches in the past that still have relationships with kids now to this day, even though they're in other places with kids they recruited and didn't get. And it was never about trying to get them to flip or, transfer. It was just like, hey, got to know you. I told you I cared about you, and I still do. Just because you went somewhere else doesn't mean I don't care about you.
Right.
And that could be it. Again, I haven't heard anything, Ryan. We've both done some digging into this and haven't heard anything that has us concerned about it.
No, I mean, it's really because this time last year we're dealing with the Peyton Bowen saga, and there's a couple other rumblings, like the Jaden Lamar stuff, because Jaden Lamar was still committed at the time. And was Dylan Edwards still committed in the class this time last year? I think he might have been out at that point.
He flipped pretty soon after Coach Sanders got hired. So, but we're close to that time, Ryan. Actually.
Yeah. Well, and And then last year, Georgia had offered Mike Cabell around this time as well.
Right.
Everyone was freaking out, like,
I
"Oh, is he
remember
going to
that
flip to
meltdown.
Georgia?" Yeah,
I remember that meltdown. His brother plays there. They're the
right,
champs. Of course he's going
right,
to leave. Okay.
right.
We'll
And
we'll see.
and a lot happened last year, obviously, which I understand where this question's coming from, PA
Sure.
Irish guy. But like
I
from
mean,
my vantage point,
yeah.
I haven't seen anything over the last few weeks that makes me worried. Really, like I mean, everything just seems kind of. We'll see
So,
though.
like, I completely understand where the question is coming from. I mean, because again, Ren, we've been down this road before. I just think that the flips that happened from Notre Dame's class have already happened. I mean, we've seen kids leave the class,
Yep.
and it's
Brandon
happened
Davis
so long.
Queen,
Yeah,
Isaiah Canyon. Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Owen Wafel, which was
Owen
a
Wafel.
little bit of a different situation, but yeah, I think those things have
Sure.
already happened. I think there were some concerns. Notre Dame needed to smooth some things over with the wide receiver commits
Yep.
once the situation Chancey Stuckey got let go. From everything we've heard, and we'll
Yep.
talk about who the names out there now. I talked about last night. I knew who it was going to be. I didn't want to put the name out there because there were still some things they're trying to figure out and work out. It's out there now,
Yep.
so we'll talk about it. But the feedback we got so far is very good.
Yes. Very good.
About what we've heard. So I know you've heard some things. I talked to Sean Davis, who knows Cam
Yep.
Williams very well. I think you also, spoke to Cam
I talked
about
to
it,
Cam
right?
about it as well. Yep. Talked to Cam about it as
So a lot of good feedback so far.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see. And then we'll share our opinion of what we know about him as well. So as far as Notre Dame trying to flip guys, I know that within the last few weeks, there are some kids that they've been in contact with. Do I see them flipping those kids? No, I don't. I think right
Yep.
now Notre Dame's really comfortable with where they're at in this class numbers wise.
Yep.
They want to be able to have some scholarships for next year's class instead of using it. And so then the positions where we're thinking about maybe trying to land a kid late. My understanding is what they're going to do is actually go to the portal to fill those needs if they need to.
Makes sense.
And then that way they have those scholarships for 2025. Because I know you've talked about this a lot, Ryan. You and Sean have talked about this a lot. The 25 class has a chance to be special, and you want to make sure that you're keeping as many openings as you can. And then Notre Dame is doing the portal the way they need to, Ryan. Targeted.
Right. Yep.
We need depth here, an impact guy there for a year or two, and be ready to rock and roll. So that's where we're at. But I think it's going to be a pretty quiet as my understanding right now. And
as quiet as
quiet
as the recruiting world can be. I mean,
right.
it's
going to be a relatively quiet last few weeks. There will be some panic. There will be some rumors that come out. That's just the nature of it. I mean, some of I got text message. Did you hear that Notre Dame's not going to play in a bowl game? I mean, some of the stuff that just goes out there in the Twitter world is just. I mean, I thought Jared Parker was supposed to already be fired by now, according to
literally
rumors and stuff.
I literally, because it was taking so long to announce the bowl game, I literally had a person that was a former NFL executive, like a assistant GM, text me and was like, I heard that Notre Dame might forego a bowl game. I'm like, this is news to me if that's the case.
And then you texted me about that. And like 30 seconds later, it's like Notre Dame's playing Oregon State in the Sun Bowl. It's like
then I saw a flash on Twitter. It was like, oh, okay, that was a really stupid rumor that someone maybe just put out in the universe. Yeah,
right. So that's the thing is, as we've told you guys before, there's a lot of craziness out there that gets put out, and we got to chase it down. I mean, we can't just ignore it because of the things that have happened, but. So I certainly understand where you're coming from, PA Irish guy. I just don't see. I think it's going to be relatively quiet. Could I see? And if I were to say, I think the odds would be better that Notre Dame flips somebody late than they get flipped. But I'm not predicting either. Just so that's not like a hint, like we know something's coming, but I can't say it. No, I'm not saying that. I know that they've been engaged with some guys. I just don't see it going anywhere at this point in time. But that's more, and the engagement they've had, Ryan, is more of them doing due diligence than them actively hard trying to flip somebody.
Sure.
It's more about let's keep all our options open. So we've got communication with this high school kid. This came open in the portal. Let's see what's going to be best for the present future of our football team. Okay, let's go that direction.
Right.
In the portal. Like, for example, Notre Dame hosted Jordan Clark this past weekend, right?
Yep.
I believe that Notre Dame was still talking to some DBs in the 2024 class. I think him and a couple other guys that they're kind of engaged with in the secondary and the portal is kind of like, no, we're going to go the portal route instead of maybe trying to flip some of these kids because these kids can help us now. And then we can focus on high school kids in the 25 class. So those are the type of decisions got to be made. But if you're not engaged with kids, you can't just turn the switch on 3 weeks before signing day with a kid that's going to be good enough to impact Notre Dame.
Right.
Is kind of the point. That's where it's at.
Sure.
It's a good question.
We had another question from Rob Osgood. What's up, Rob? And it's a super chat as well. Thank you so much. I'm excited about the bowl game. Don't care if it's the Rose, Cotton, Sun, or Toilet Bowl. Let the young guys play and get a jump start for next year. Well, there are going to be some young guys that are going to have to play, Rob. I mean, we'll talk about it, but there's going to be a couple kids that are going to sit out for the bowl game. It's going to happen, right? So there is going to be some younger guys that are going to be pressed into more duty, whether that is first-time starter, whether that is key backup now, reserve, whether that is a guy that was, barely on the depth chart that now has to have those, third team reps in case something happens in those emergency duties. So we are going to see some younger guys play. I think there's no doubt about it. And I mean, this is the world that we live in. Literally, Notre Dame is going to play against an Oregon State team in the bowl game that is going to be down their top 2 quarterbacks, their leading rusher, and probably a couple offensive linemen. That's the world we're in right now, man. So you can expect some younger guys playing a little bit more. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they have to do it in some cases. And as you said, Ryan, they're going to get some young guys involved. And they did this last year. I mean, they ramped up Jalen Snead's reps last year for the bowl game. He redshirted last year, but he had the ability to play in the bowl game, obviously, because of the rule.
Yep.
So we saw some kids in the bowl game last year get a lot more playing time than they had. Even some on special teams, some young kids played special teams who took red shirts during the season. So I could see a lot of that happening. And in some instances, I mean, we'll get into too much because we'll let those guys make their announcements. But yeah, there's going to be some opt-outs for Notre Dame of the bowl game, and we're going to see obviously young kids are step into a lot of those positions as well. So it's going to be interesting. The thing is, Rob, I understand where you're coming from, but I've said this before: Notre Dame needs to win this bowl game.
Yes.
Look, I mean, could you imagine if they lose to Oregon State, to a team whose coach just left, and their top 2 quarterbacks from the portal, and their starting star running back is going to be out because of he got arrested, right? I mean,
right. Driving on the influence. Yeah.
So, you got to win the game. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And development is great, but development can't be at the expense of winning the game. And so now that doesn't mean that necessarily they can't win if they don't if they decide, hey, we're going to play Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury a lot. I don't view that as sacrificing winning.
No.
You know what I mean? Because I think those kids can help you win, right? But you have to still have Riley Mills and Howard Cross, and you know what I mean? You're not setting those guys either.
You have to have a good mixture. You have to have a good mixture. You
Exactly.
can't do a full reload. You got to still have your staples that have played football on the college level.
And you're going to have some veterans coming back next year.
Yep.
So you're going to want to play those guys as well, because the big key is winning. That's going to be the big key. About Mike Brown. Mike Brown is currently the wide receivers coach and I believe assistant head coach at Wisconsin.
Yep.
He previously served as the wide receivers coach at Cincinnati from, I think it was 2019 was his first year there. I believe, right? I'm actually trying to find his bio because he's a pretty young guy.
He's only 34, right?
Yeah, he's a younger guy. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find his bio right now. Let me just pull it up because that took me to the football coach or the basketball coach. I'm like, nope, that ain't it. But so he was at Cincinnati from 2019 to 2022. Prior to that, he was the running backs coach at Liberty in 2018. He was a GA at Delaware in 2017. And he was a GA.
He played at Liberty, right?
Yes, he did. And he was a GA at Michigan in 2016, which was Harbaugh's second year at Michigan. He is from Virginia. He's from Charlottesville, Virginia. He's 34, played at Liberty.
Yep.
And, the latest is, and I put this on the board last night, it is not a done deal yet, but it's one of those it's a Notre Dame not a done deal yet, is my understanding. Is there's some things that they have to figure out, but I do believe, based on talking to multiple sources, that this is the guy that Marcus Freeman wants to be his next receivers coach, and the guy that
expectation. Expectation.
Yeah. Now, I understand some of the reaction. Just because you don't know who he is doesn't mean he's not a good coach.
Yes,
that's just the reality of it.
Yep.
And so I didn't know a lot about him, Ryan. Same. I just heard the name. I didn't know who Cincinnati's receivers coach was in 2021. All that we knew is their receivers were really well coached.
Yes. I mean, they were for the last couple years, man. Because
Yeah.
I saw your report where you said like 2021 was great. I didn't study 2022. I did study
Right, for the
2022.
draft.
Yeah, and Tyler Scott was good. Tyler Scott was real good.
Wasn't that the year that Pierce and Scott were coming out, or did Pierce come out 21?
Pierce was after 2021 season.
Okay.
Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker were in the 2022
so basically,
season.
for the draft prospects, you broke down 2 years of Cincinnati film of the receivers. So that just I want to give context to people so they understand that this isn't watching a couple games because Notre Dame played them. This is what you do for the NFL draft stuff. So continue, Ryan, what you saw.
Well, I mean, and Alec Pierce, who actually is from Glenbard West, which was kind of cool. When I talked to Cam Williams about Coach Brown and his relationship with him, and I'll have a piece on him when everything is official, all T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But he is from Glenbard West. So obviously Cam's from Glenbard South, but they're, from a stone's throw from each other as far as that. But Alec Pierce was a really well-coached kid, man. I mean, he could run. He was big and physical, but really nuanced with how he played the game, man. Like, he really understood how to get on top of dudes, how to stack, how to find blind spots in certain coverages. Really talented player. I thought Tyler Scott was one of the most underrated players in the 2023 NFL draft. He was the kind of the guy after Alec Pierce. He was a little bit more of a shifty, fast type of receiver compared to a boundary type receiver that Alec Pierce was. But Tyler Scott was a really good route runner, man. Really good route runner, really nuanced player, but also incredibly fast.
Ask Kyle Hamilton.
Yes.
How good of a route runner Tyler Scott was. Because I believe he's the guy that smoked Kyle Hamilton on that corner route for a touchdown against Notre Dame in 2021. It was Tyler Scott, correct? In the slot?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. So Alec Pierce was like a second or third round pick. Tyler Scott was a third or a fourth round pick. And then Trey Tucker, I think, was drafted last year as well.
So those three kids, Ryan, I believe, were second, third, and fourth. And I'm not sure which one was which, but when I looked it up, second, third, and fourth.
Yep.
Is what he produced.
Sounds right. Right.
And I believe, I mean, I think one of those kids was a transfer. Well, and then Michael Young also transferred there and was a much better player there than he was at Notre Dame.
I think Tyler Scott was a transfer at one point, I believe. But regardless, all of those kids were not highly recruited players. Young.
Yes. He didn't transfer as like a fifth-year guy that had already been developed, correct? He played for him for a couple of years, I believe, right?
Well, and the biggest thing for me, Brian, is like Mike Brown, if he is announced as the wide receiver coach at Notre Dame, and when he is announced, they need to be great. He needs to be a great developer. You need to be able to develop your talent. And again, we'll see what happens at Notre Dame. But when he was at Cincinnati, he took some kids that were 3-star recruits, more big names. Like Alec Pierce wasn't a big name coming out of Glenbard West, but you know what he did? Harness that talent and developed it, man. And he did that multiple times at Cincinnati. So I'm hopeful for the hire because I've listened to basically every interview that I could find on YouTube of him just to kind of hear how articulate he is and how he speaks. I've done obviously the research as far as like who he's tutored and everything. He's a young guy, but I think this is a really interesting hire that I think is going to pay off for Notre Dame. Now we need to see it, but on paper, it looks pretty good to me. Looks pretty good.
I'm actually a fan of hiring former players to coach wide receivers. In general, it's not a hard, fast rule, but in general, I only played wide receiver in college for a year, right? But so like it's obviously it's not a hard, fast rule, but this is the right kind of former player. Not a guy with basically 1 year of coaching experience because he's come up through the ranks. He came up as a GA at Michigan and then Delaware, then coached at Liberty for a year. And he's kind of developed and he's kind of learned, as a coach. And Ryan, look, when the film speaks for itself, and unless he's the luckiest coach in the world, because I didn't watch these kids in high school, unless he's the luckiest coach in the world and he happened to get nothing but kids that came to college, just a bunch of, Jaden Greathouses, as far as knowing how to run routes, this guy did a really good job of. Little things like a comprehensive release package, just little things like that. Understanding how to properly attack leverage, good top ends, knowing how to Alec Pierce was great at knowing how to close off on vertical routes outside. Is one of his best attributes. That's why now he's fast, right? Yes. So that helps. But you could be fast, but if I'm covering you, Ryan, and we're both 4.4s. Because we just made ourselves on NCAA 2024, right? So we're both 4.4s.
Or we just flashed back to when I was 17. But
sure. So if I'm covering you and you're a 4.5 and I'm a 4.4, or excuse me, you're a 4.4 and I'm a 4.5 and I'm covering you, and you beat me outside and you just stay outside, I'm going to recover and get myself in position to kind of defend you to a degree.
Yeah.
But so we talk about like get outside and then close me off, stack. We call it stacking. So now you've got me on your back hip. Now I'm done. The only hope I have is that the quarterback doesn't throw a very good ball. Right.
Or you can go, or you're going to go through them, and it's going to be a pass interference.
Exactly. And those little things like that, properly manipulating guys with the top, with the top end is the technique you use at the top end, right? But the lead into that, do you know how to stem? Do you know how to widen? Do you know how to squeeze down on those different things? His guys showed the ability to do that, and they fight for the football.
Yep.
I didn't watch this Wisconsin stuff this year because honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I watched enough of what I've seen at Cincinnati to say that's going to be a lot more indicative of who he is than what he did at Wisconsin. But I've heard. Go ahead, Ryan.
Pleasant sign was that Wisconsin's leading receiver this year was actually a kid he brought from Cincinnati and was working with for the second year, the Will Paulding kid. And like, that shows me, like, because this is your opinion would be, right? And this is just like a general football fan would be, you could probably recruit better at Wisconsin than you can in Cincinnati consistently. That would be where your mind would go, right? Sure. Well, he brought a kid that he had been working with for a year to Wisconsin, and he suddenly became their best receiver. I think that's telling because he's been working with him for 2 years. I think that's telling a little bit.
Here's an interesting development too, Ryan. I don't know if you saw this. The Chamari, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Is it DK?
I think it's DK. Yep.
He jumped in the portal today. So, I don't know if that would be a guy they would look at, but, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, what kind of recruiter is he? Don't know. The kids you and Sean have talked to say they love the guy. I mean, Cam Williams is fired up. I mean, as soon as the rumors came out, Cam Williams is fired up. And, Logan Saldate tweeted something like, I knew Coach Freeman would come through for us or something like, I mean, you know what I mean? So like there seems to be some excitement. And I believe that Logan's excitement comes from what Cam has told him primarily about Mike Brown.
He's recruited. Mike Brown recruited Cam obviously when he was at Cincinnati, and he even told me that he's recruited him a little bit while he was at Wisconsin as well. So yeah, man, he's recruited him for a couple years now, and I mean, just kind of the general feedback, guys. Like again, I'll have a more in depth piece on it. When it is official, but I mean, Cam talked about like he's a meticulous teacher, but he's like super laid back, and he's like one of those guys that's very approachable, and you can kind of, and I think that was a little bit of the problem with previous, right? As far as like the approachability of the teacher to a degree, right? So I think that could be big time potentially for the wide receivers moving forward. They have to know one that you know what you're talking about and you know the craft, which again, like no shade to Chancey Stuckey. I think he knows the craft of playing wide receiver. But
there's no doubt about that. Yeah, you're right.
The art of teaching it, and then the art, also the art of, and this is underrated aspect of it, and there's different ways to do this, but the players have to feel like you are approachable to be able to ask questions, or else it's blocked off and there's no kind of deeper understanding of and comfortability with asking questions. And I think that sounds like that's who Mike Brown is. So hopeful for it, man. I think that they're on paper, it is very appealing. I want to see now. He's been at Cincinnati, Wisconsin, his two most previous spots. Well, how big time of a recruiter can he be at Notre Dame? I'm not sure what the answer to that one is. I have no idea. But we also had questions about Chancey Stuckey as far as how good of a recruiter can that guy be? He was just at Baylor, right? Well, he was actually a good recruiter. So, you know what I mean? Like, I think that hopefully you can answer those questions pretty early on. But I have a feeling that Notre Dame is going to be well coached at wide receiver at very least, which is a good step forward, obviously.
And this is a very, very initial, very high-end view, but here are some receivers that they have offered in the 2025 class that's relevant to Notre Dame. Jamie French, who's committed to Bama, but Kobe, I'm just going down in order. Kobe Howard.
Yep.
Dalen McCutcheon, Cooper Perry.
Yep.
Quincy Porter, Taylon Taylor are all guys that he has recruited at Wisconsin. Now, my hope is that they take a different look at Cooper Perry than they did before. That's my hope.
Yes.
So yeah, that would be very, very nice if they could do that. So, Ryan, again, I like it. What I know right now, this makes a lot of sense. And this is a pickup that I like. Great. And again, he's a good teacher. And yeah, it'd be nice to have someone that, is a pass game coordinator. He was that at Cincinnati the 1 year under Gino. Their pass game wasn't very good. I don't really care about that for receivers coach. my whole thing was, okay, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do schematically. If you have the knowledge to help out with that, great. But if you're a great scheme guy, and this kind of gets down to the question from Ryan Pratt, because Ryan, you kind of got us talking about Coach Brown, and then I'll bring up some other questions about Coach Brown. But his specific question was, how does a different scheme offensively impact the position coach, i.e. Mike Brown at Wisconsin versus Notre Dame? It only impacts you from the standpoint of, you're going to have to apply the things you believe in to different types of concepts and tempos and things along those lines.
Alignments and that.
Yeah. And so it certainly has an impact. Usually, however, that's the easiest thing for receivers coaches. I'm just speaking from experience, right? I mean, so what we ran at Christopher Newport was not like what we ran at Duquesne when I was coaching, right? Now, so when I went to Christopher Newport, there were some things I had to change, with what they were doing. There's some things I had to adapt to because our offense was a little bit different, things along those lines. But the principles of route running don't change. They just get applied a little bit differently. So I don't think that's going to be a huge difference, a huge problem, to be honest with you. And the Cincinnati offense is going to look a lot different than what I think Jared Parker wants to do at Notre Dame. And as long as it's Jared Parker driving the direction of the offense and not Gino Guidugli, then I think they're going to be fine. And Mike Brown's obviously someone that Marcus Freeman knows. And this is a big part of this, Ryan, with everything that went down the last couple of years and with what went down again this year with the receivers coach. I wrote this article after the whole Andy Lowick fiasco last year. Marcus Freeman, as best he can, needs to surround himself with people he trusts. He absolutely has to surround himself with people he trusts, people that he doesn't have to always be in the receiver room to make sure guys aren't being treated a certain way, right? And this is a guy he's worked with for several years at Cincinnati. So he knows how this guy interacts. He knows the way this guy builds relationships. And the fact that this is the pick so quickly tells us two things. That firing Chancey Stuckey on Tuesday after the last Stanford game was not an emotional, sudden, I'm upset because the season, let's fire this guy. Right. And gee, who should I hire now? Oh, what about him? This is something that this is not intel. This is just my read on the situation. Yep. The intel is that you and I anticipated for a month that Chancey Stuckey wasn't going to be back. Right. So I have to think that Marcus Freeman knew that when the time comes, that's where I'm going, because I know that guy, I trust that guy, and I've seen what he can do because my defense had to go against his receivers all the time, and it was a problem. You know who else is going to know what this guy can do? Mike Mickens, because again, they coached together for a year before he came over to Notre Dame. So
our guys were battling too, man. Wide receivers versus corners, they were battling. So
no doubt. And so just of what I know, and again, this isn't guaranteeing that he's going to be successful because I don't know. You never truly know. But what we know about him, Ryan, so far, I've yet to find anything that I don't like other than he just doesn't have the track record of doing it for 15, 20 years that maybe some other guys do. Sure. That's okay. Neither did Mike Mickens when they hired him, right? And so overall, I like it. And I do believe we had a couple other questions about this that I wanted to get to before we get to some other questions. Okay. Ryan, so we can just kind of knock all this receiver stuff out. So let me just see if I can. I thought maybe I didn't star him because we had that one earlier, but let me just go see if I can find. Yeah, we had. Oh, here it was. It's just initial impression of the receivers coach. So that one we already kind of already got to that. So I believe that we've kind of. Here we go. Okay.
We had Charlie Weiss's last belt who said, with the expected hire of Coach Mike Brown, what kind of wide receivers do you see him going after name-wise? So are we talking about in the portal or are we talking about recruiting?
I would assume he's talking recruiting, right?
Are you talking about recruiting? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Charlie, based upon his time specifically at Cincinnati, because he was there longer than Wisconsin, obviously, right? I think it would appear, because I haven't talked to him, obviously, but it would appear that he's a very complimentary type of guy from a wide receiver perspective, because we just named three guys, right? Let's just use those three guys that I already mentioned. Alec Pierce, 6'3", 210-pound boundary receiver that ran 4.3 something. That's one archetype, right? Tyler Scott, more of a Z receiver, field guy. He was like 6 foot, 190 pounds, 185 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark, right? A little bit more sleeker, a little bit more of a route runner, that type of dude, a little bit better change of direction. And then you got Trey Tucker, who Trey was, I think, like 5'9", 5'10", a buck 80, you know, soaking wet, but he was a speed merchant. He was a guy, slot type, really good change of direction, after catch guy. So I'm led to believe, Brian, again, because those were the wide receivers he developed at Cincinnati, that he's probably a very complementary skill set type of guy. You know, what does a boundary look like? What does a Z look like? What does a slot look like? It seems like you're probably getting those characteristics of what you traditionally think of what a boundary looks like. You know what I mean? A big, physical outside receiver that can run. A Z, a little bit more sleek, a little bit better of a route runner, understands spacing, and then a slot receiver, after catch ability, finding soft spots in zone, really good in short areas. That seems like what he's probably going to push for, in my opinion, based upon the track record.
Well, and at the end of the day, that sounds good, and I agree with what you're saying. But at the end of the day, he's going to push for things that are going to fit what the offense that Notre Dame is going to implement is going to do. If he would have stayed at Wisconsin for 5 years, the type of receivers he would have recruited would have looked a little bit different than what he would recruit if he's at Notre Dame for the next 5 years, because one is a pure air raid offense that's looking for a certain type of guy. Doesn't necessarily have to be complimentary, Ryan. It's just more about fine speed. At Notre Dame, to your point, the desire will be more for find the complementary players because it's more pro style, which Cincinnati is more pro style. Now, I want Notre Dame to look different than Cincinnati, and I wasn't a big fan of the Cincinnati offense the last couple of years. But I did like some of the personnel in it, and I liked the way that they were coached technically at the receiver position. I didn't love the coordinating, at least the 2022 season. And I think Luke Fickell kind of did some similar things with Mike Denbrock at there that we've seen Brian Kelly do with coordinators over the years, which is, I mean, the Mike Denbrock we've seen at LSU in the last 2 years looks nothing like the Mike Denbrock we saw at Cincinnati. It looks a lot more like the Mike Denbrock we saw at Notre Dame for a year, you know, before Kelly kind of ruined it and started getting other coaches more involved and took some of Denbrock's authority away and those type of things. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be more about what are they asking him to do, right? They're going to ask him to, this is the kind of guy we're like. What I like, Ryan, is some of the guys he offered at Wisconsin are exactly what you're talking about. Like Cooper Perry is one thing. Quincy Porter's a completely different thing. And Dalen McCutcheon is a complete and Dalen, like, to me, Dalen McCutcheon and Taylor kind of in a similar mold. One's maybe more dynamic, one's a little bit better route runner, but they're kind of similar players. Cooper Perry is a little bit different than both of them. And then obviously Quincy Porter is much different than others. And he's offered like Taz Williams, Kobe Howard's much different than all those guys. He's a shorter, shiftier type of guy. There's some other big, tall guys. So he offered a very different type of group of receivers at Wisconsin in the 25 class. So I think that speaks to your point of even within the air raid principles, there's still some different looking dudes that he went after in that class. So will he be able to get them or not? Don't know. We'll find that out.
Yep.
But
that's my biggest question mark right now is like, I think pertaining to where he's been a good recruiter, but like, you never know what it's going to be when you're now at the biggest stage and you have to fight for the big fish. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of a different animal at that point.
Right. Now, here's the thing. He's going to have Marcus Freeman and Chad Bowden helping him recruit.
And Jared Parker.
And Jared Parker, who we've heard a lot of good things about as a recruiter.
And a former wide receiver coach as well, so he can relate that way. Yep.
They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine, in my opinion. Now, I reached out, and I'm not sure if I talked about this last night, so I'll just repeat it again for those who are on the show that didn't hear it last night, if I did even say it. I reached out to a couple friends of mine in the coaching profession. One guy knows Mike Brown really well. And I asked him, I said, talk to me. I said, look, this is what Notre Dame needs. I said, they need a guy that can take players that are raw, that have potential, and he needs to coach them up and develop the technical and mental part of the game to a high level. Can he do that? And then the guy just kind of went off about how great he is and how good he is at those things. And how he puts a lot of emphasis, I'm told, on just the finer points of receiver play, just the, really emphasizing the craft. I talk a lot about the craft. That was something I asked the guy about. Was part of my question is this someone who's going to take pride in the craft of the position? Because this guy knows me and he knows what I want. And so he understood what I meant by that. And he was like, absolutely. Went on all these, this long breakdown of, and he's also kind of a quiet guy, but he's got a lot of fire, so it sounds like he's very much a teacher in that regard, which I think that was an important part of this hire too for Marcus Freeman. You got to find a different personality than what you had before, because there's going to be some, just come in there, scream, and there's going to be like, hold on a second, we're doing this again. You need a guy that's going to be a teacher first. And from what I'm told, that's what he is. Now, again, none of those things guarantee success. Yeah. I'm simply relaying to you all what I have been told by people that know a lot more about him than I do. And over the next couple weeks, I'll do even more film study and I'll talk to even more people. But those are the early impressions. Because if you remember, Ryan, you go back and somebody actually pulled a link to our intel piece when we announced this Chancey Stuckey was going to be the hire.
Yeah.
And I said, look, here's why Notre Dame is hiring him. We have reservations. We're not sure about it. We have concerns. This one, I have not heard. I do not have those same concerns. I mean, from everything I know, everything I've heard, it seems like a really good hire. And from somebody also posted, I'm going to try and find out if this is true or not, but somebody posted that he's the 13th highest paid receivers coach in college football.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Which, if true, would tell you that Notre Dame, this isn't like somebody said this is just like an easy hire, low hanging fruit and that kind of thing. And that would not be accurate if this is the hire that they made. Actually, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it's a pro football. It's a Football Scoop article.
Okay.
And he is tied for 13th in the highest paid receivers coaches in college football. Now, keep in mind, a lot of private schools don't release their salary information.
Sure.
So you won't see Notre Dame's receivers coach anywhere in there. But in order for that to be the case, and I'm looking at his salary now, that's in recent years, Notre Dame has had coordinators making somewhat close to that. So in order for them to get him to leave that job to come here, bet you there's a pay raise coming. So this was not a cheap hire, easy hire, low hanging fruit, those kind of things. Marcus Freeman believes in this hire. Does that guarantee success? No, it does not. Because here's the thing for me, Ryan. Somebody said, well, I thought we didn't like when coaches hired their buddies. Number one, never said that as a blanket rule. I had two schools of thought on this. Number one, if you're going to hire a buddy, he better be qualified to do the job. Number two, if your buddy doesn't do the job, you've got to be able to fire him. That was the bigger problem with Brian Kelly. Right. Because some of the buddies he brought in didn't do a very good job. Charlie Molnar didn't do a very good job. Jeff Quinn didn't do a very good job. Brian Van Gorder did a terrible job. But some of his other buddies also include Mike Denbrock, Chuck Martin, Mike Elston, Bob Diaco, Kerry Cooks, who I all thought to varying degrees did pretty good jobs at Notre Dame. Yeah. And so, those are different things that I look at and say, it's about when they prove themselves not qualified or not capable to get the job done, can you get rid of them or not? Right. That's the bigger issue that we had with Brian Kelly and hiring guys just because it was comfortable. And so like when the issue I had with him hiring Tommy Rees is like, look, there are other highly qualified guys that want this job that you didn't even give the time of day to truly convince you that they were the right hire. You had already made your mind up. Right. That I don't like as much but this is a guy with a little bit more of a track record than Tommy had. And obviously Tommy's doing well now, but that was my issue with that hire, Ryan, was more of that. Some of those hires is more of that. And can you fire a guy? It was never blanket, don't hire guys If anything, with what Marcus Freeman's dealing with behind the scenes, he needs to steer into hiring guys that he knows. That's a big part of it, as long as he's making the right hires of people he knows, not just bringing in people he knows just because. Sure. Because they've got to I can trust you all I want, but if you can't do the job, we don't win games because I trust you. We win games because I trust you and you're good at what you're doing and what you do. Those are going to be all very important parts of it. So yeah, lots of portal questions today too, Ryan. So that we'll dive more into this when the hire is made, but we did want to kind of get out some initial thoughts on this hire.
Our next question we have was from 99 Problems, but BK ain't one. Thank you so much. It said, thoughts on Julian Fleming. I think we had two questions about Julian Fleming as a portal option for Notre Dame. Of course, this is a wide receiver from Ohio State, former 5-star. Thoughts on him as a player, Does he have unrealized potential? Would he be a guy Notre Dame would be interested in? Brian, can I just say from the Julian Fleming thing, because I've seen this on Twitter now or on X. I've seen this in the chat, obviously. I even saw it on the message board. I think someone was asking about Julian Fleming. I have not particularly been impressed by Julian Fleming the last couple years for Ohio State for a couple of different reasons. One, I don't necessarily think he brings something to the table that is like super exciting or rare, right? Like he brings a solid overall profile, but he's been banged up a lot in his Ohio State career too. He's been banged up a lot. And I know a lot of, and from what I've seen, kind of struggles to work through contact consistently. Just like play strength isn't great. I'm just not there on Julian Fleming. I will say this to the question 99 problems. There's a lot of other receivers that are in the portal right now that I would have a lot more interested in Julian Fleming personally. Now, it doesn't mean that Notre Dame shares that sentiment, but for me, that is my sentiment.
Well, I haven't heard anything about Notre Dame looking at him, just personally. Wouldn't surprise me if they did. I personally would look into him, Ryan, just from the standpoint of you need to add, in my opinion, probably 2 receivers to the roster.
Sure.
Would he be my top choice? Probably not. Just because of what you mentioned. I actually think he like, I guess where I'm coming from is like, I actually really like the talent at receiver for Notre Dame right now. I don't think they need to get a surefire, no-brainer boundary receiver. I think they need someone to come in and coach Deion Colzie up, right? And so my attractiveness of someone like Julian Fleming is someone who can come in and provide you, if so-and-so doesn't pan out, whatever the case may be, you're going to look at him. But my counter to that, why ultimately I don't think the fit would make sense, is if he was just okay being just a good veteran presence, he'd stay at Ohio State.
Right.
He wants to go somewhere he can be the guy. And the reality is, I just don't view him as a better player than the guys Notre Dame has. I just don't. I mean, I like the fact that he's an outside receiver. He has some size to him. To your point, he doesn't play necessarily as physically as you'd think a guy that looks like he looks, but he brings a veteran outside presence that, made a huge 4th down catch on the game-winning drive against Notre Dame, right? And so he can make plays, but I just don't think that's a guy that you're going to want to bring in, because my ideal is not to bring in Julian Fleming to start him. My ideal is to bring Julian Fleming as a veteran leader and a depth player and protection against injury. So I don't know that one necessarily would make a lot of sense as far as the fit goes, but he's definitely, to me, worth talking about, because at least in the conversation, because of the experience he has at a place like Ohio State in big games. And, because I think it was the Michigan game he made a big, tough catch as well, or was it Penn State? I forget, one of those two, he made a really big catch in one of those moments. But to your point, Ryan, if I knew that Deion Colzie was healthy and getting coached up, Deion Colzie to me is a much more potential impact player than Julian Fleming. He's just not as proven as Julian Fleming right now. That would be my thing. So there are just other guys on the board that I would prefer.
I mean, if I'm pushing, I'm just pushing for, if I'm bringing in 2 guys, I want 2 guys that have a skill set that maybe I don't have enough of on the roster. That's kind of what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a couple guys out there that I'm like, they have length and they have athleticism, right? You only have one guy that fits that mold anymore, and that's Deion Colzie, who's obviously still coming back from the injury, or is recovering still from the injury. And aside from that, I mean, like, if there's a guy that is super explosive and can take the top off a little bit, that'd be great. That'd be something I would look at. If there's a dynamic presence in space, I would take a look at that. I'm trying to supplement traits that are lost, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
I don't disagree with you at all on that, Ryan. I think that's your preference. My thing, however, is you have to have guys on the board if you don't land those guys, and it comes down to numbers. Because if you were to tell me that everybody that's going to be on the roster next year is healthy for the entire year, and you're going to add one more guy to the roster, would I be comfortable with that? Yeah, I would. Because I've said before, they have a couple walk-ons to me that can really help your football team out in some of the, whether it be special teams or being a really good scout team player to give your defense a look. If Leo Scheidler's down there playing scout team for you, go back and watch Leo Scheidler's high school film. That kid's a good football player. And so if I was at Indiana State, I'm begging that kid to transfer to Indiana State and leave Notre Dame. You get my point? So there's some kids like that. It's not just 9 guys and then nobody else. You have some different numbers. The concern I have, Ryan, is because of the 9, you have so many guys with really questionable injury histories.
Yep.
Deion Colsey, Jaden Thomas, Caleb Smith. I don't view Jaden Greathouse's issue as the same thing, because he just had a hamstring that, it's just one of those, that's a strength conditioning, stretching, whatever you're going to do kind of thing. It's not a, the only kids who I've ever experienced have chronic hamstring injuries are guys who have always had chronic hamstring injuries, because they're just more tightly wound, and it just flares up on them more. It's not something I expect. But so that's my thing, is like, you need a second guy, I think, now that you lost the 4 that you're going to lose.
Sure.
Because of the injury history that you have. And so that was my point, is if you can't get some of these other kids, like I would look at Bo Collins before I would take Bo Collins before I would take Julian Fleming.
Because Julian Fleming also has a little bit of durability stuff as well. He's missed some time in the past.
Exactly. And so that's why I think I'd have him on the board. I just don't believe, based on what's out there, that he would be in my top group of guys to go after. Here's why people are talking about him, though, Ryan. He's a former 5-star recruit that played at Ohio State. And look, and when healthy, he did some nice things. I mean, look at the numbers he had last year playing for CJ Stroud: 34 catches, 533 yards. Right, it's pretty good. Here's the problem: he missed 2 games to start the season because he was hurt. You know what I mean? So that's kind of been the deal for him. I think this was the first healthy year he had, of his career, where he literally lined up and played every game. So there's a lot of really good receivers out there.
There are
that Notre Dame can look at, and we'll get to one of them, because there's a lot of questions about one of those kids here coming up. We have let's just get to that, Ryan. Let's just get to the stuff about Chris Mitchell.
All right, DM ND13, what's up, Dan? Thanks for the article on Chris Mitchell. How excited would you be if he commits to Notre Dame?
I'd be very pleased. Ryan, as I was breaking down his film the last couple of days, you and I talk about comps a lot, because we get asked about comps a lot. So we'll kind of like, who's this guy remind you of? And I'm watching this kid play, and I'm just keep thinking, this kid reminds me so much of Kevin Stefferson early in his career, just as a route runner, just a skinny, not real strong, but as he's gotten older, his functional strength as a receiver has gotten better. He can get in people's way in the blocker. He's better. You go watch film of him 2 years ago and watch film of him now. He's much better getting off the line, because he's got more playing strength compared to what he did. But he's never going to be a guy that's going to go out there and beat guys up like Rico Flores did as a freshman in the run game, right? Or physically. But he's a much more explosive athlete off the line. I talk a lot about urgency with receivers, Ryan. The receivers in Notre Dame don't play with urgency. This kid plays with urgency as a route runner. He comes off the line with purpose. Good top ends. He understands, top end manipulation. He's very good at seeing zone versus man and how to break a route off when I'm playing zone, and how to break it off when playing man. He shows really good concentration and ability to I wouldn't call them like not contested catches, meaning like he's not winning a ton of like one-on-one Mossa guy type of throws, although he has some. I mean, I'm going to have one on a highlight throw, but it's more so like he had a catch against, I think it was North Texas, and they had a catch like this against Arkansas, where he was running over the middle, and there's like a guy in front of him, a guy behind him, and a guy like kind of where he's running to, and the quarterback would put it in like that window, and there's 3 guys converging on him, and he still goes out and snatches it and makes the catch, right? Like, so there's some mental toughness there to him as well that I like. And so look, and he's got production. Now, production at FIU does not necessarily translate to production at Notre Dame.
Sure.
That to me, Ryan, is why the Arkansas game was important to see, why the New Mexico State game was important to see, the Jacksonville State game was important to see, and what was the other one? The Liberty game was important to see. Liberty not quite as much, because they didn't play anybody, but we know they're a good football team. But with Jack State and New Mexico State, we saw those teams go up against Power 5 teams, and we saw how their receivers played against those teams. And then so when we can see this kid play against them, and then we see what this kid did to Arkansas, you're like, okay, this kid can play. And this kid had his best games last year against, honestly, with the exception of the main game, because they're not very good. But most of his big games last year, Ryan, this past season, were against the best teams they played, which tells me something. I mean, this is a kid that had 6 catches for 157 yards against Arkansas, 8 catches for 116 yards against Western Kentucky, 5 catches for 109 yards against Jacksonville State. He had 8 catches for 91 yards against New Mexico State, 4 for 89 against Liberty. Those are the best teams he played this year. right? And so like that, to me, that tells me something about this kid, and tells me that this is a kid that's going to step up in the big moments and play well. And the other thing too that surprised me, Ryan, is one thing that I always get concerned about with kids like him, because they're skinnier, is what's the durability like? This kid played over 700 snaps this year, which is a lot of snaps for a receiver. Yeah. And also his best month was the last month. He was better in the last 4 games than he was at any 4-game stretch during the entire season. That, again, that's something that tells me something. This is a kid that, was able to play just as good early in the season as he played, or late in the season as he did early, despite being skinny and playing a ton of snaps. Yeah. So I was impressed by that. So yeah, I think this would be a very good pickup, and it would complement, if you get him also, there's almost no need to have Jaden Greathouse playing much outside. You can almost exclusively put him inside next year, and then, do some mixing and matching, but you can put him inside. Here's my only concern, Ryan. Not concern. This is going to be a coaching point for the position coach if he comes. They play exclusively left-right at Florida International. The only time I ever saw him lining up to the right was when they went twins with a tight end backside, and so both receivers are over. So we haven't seen him play with an opposite foot stance a lot. That takes some work. It's not like Sam Hartman getting rid of the mesh, but it is something you have to be cognizant of and work with him immediately as when he gets over here. It's like, hey, for the next week or the next month, I don't want you lining up on the left side in any drill that we do, right? Just work on fixing your stance, and then it's a bit hyperbolic, but you get the point, right? Is you got to work that out of them. But that's a minor thing that has no impact on whether I would take him or not. If I'm Notre Dame, that's just more of as this position coach, I've got to be prepared that this kid doesn't really know how to get into an opposite foot stance. It's like kind of moving a guy from left tackle to right tackle. It can be done. Sure. It just takes some work to change the eye discipline, the footwork. This foot's back, that foot's back. I'm always leading with this hand. Now I'm always leading with this hand. It just takes some work, but it can certainly be done.
Well, I appreciated as a film watcher that he always lined up on the left side, because I always knew where he was, so I didn't have to try to find, what arm sleeve is he wearing? An arm sleeve? Is his towel in his back? Like, does he have a visor? Like, just annoying things. Like, that's the worst part of breaking down film sometimes. Is like, unless you have guys that are just tagged on every play, it's like, I have no idea where that wide receiver is now. I need to find him again. But he was always on the left, whether that was on the outside or in the slot, always out there. And you mentioned a couple of my favorite things, Brian, right? Like, he is a sleek built 6'1", somewhere in that ballpark. I think he's closer to 6 foot than his 6'1" listing. 175 pounds, maybe 180 pounds on a good day. He's a lighter dude. But one thing, I literally texted my buddy he's a assistant on the Conference USA that actually played against Chris Mitchell this year. And I just said, hey, tell me about this kid. And one thing he said about a potential fit at Notre Dame was, the kid's explosive, and Notre Dame could probably definitely use a little bit more explosiveness, yes. Right? And it's like, yes, that is 100% what they need to continue to build into that room. So the kid is explosive, pretty good top end speed. He can get on top of dudes well, and he's pretty sleek in and out of breaks. So those things work, man. Those things profile to any system, because that's the biggest thing, Brian, when I'm talking about like jumping from group of 5 up to power 5, or from FCS up to whatever. Like, when you're jumping up a level, you have to have the athletic traits to translate to a higher level, right? And this kid does. I guarantee he's a 4.4 something athlete. Guarantee it. Gets up to his stop speed very well, and he gets in and out of breaks with relative ease. So I like him a lot. I think that if you get him and one other just good player in the portal at wide receiver, you're good to go, man. I'm happy. I'm happy with where you are, especially with where you were about a week ago at this point. So yeah.
I'll say this too, Ryan. When you look at a receiver going from, it's a lot easier to me for a receiver to transition from that level to the other than it is for a quarterback. And for certain positions, because it's kind of like the game is the game at certain positions. And quarterback is the one for me because the speed of the game is so much different. But to your point, this is a kid who has some experience playing in some of those moments, which I really liked. But the other thing too, Ryan, is when you mentioned explosiveness. Yep. Would you agree with me that the 3 most explosive players coming back for Notre Dame on next year's team, if everyone's healthy, is probably Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, and Deion Colsey? Would you agree with that? Of the guys coming back, not the incoming freshmen, but the guys coming back.
Probably, yeah.
Well, the issue is one of those guys is more of a pure boundary, and the other 2 guys are slots. Yep. So in order to get that explosive at Z, you either need to A, only rely on Cam Williams, or B, move somebody that's maybe a more natural fit somewhere else outside. Sure. This kid gives you that kind of weapon there if you get him. And again, I feel Notre Dame did a great job with him this weekend. I do know that there's some other schools he's considering. I feel like Notre Dame did a great job. We'll see if they can close on it, right? But I think this would give you an option of, I mean, I'm sitting there thinking about a receiving core that if everybody pans out, the people that got Deion Colzier, Jaden Thomas in the boundary, Jaden Greathouse or Jordan Faison in the slot, and then this kid and Cam Williams outside, and then, KK Smith can kind of play both of those positions. All of a sudden, I feel a whole lot better about this receiver room. And I didn't even mention Micah Gilbert. You know what I mean? Who I think is a kid who can play. I didn't mention Logan Saldate. So all of a sudden, I start feeling a lot better because the other thing too is, Ryan, you're not asking this kid to come in and repeat his numbers at Florida International at Notre Dame. Now, if he does, that's great, but you don't necessarily need him to do that. It's because he's going to have a much better complementary group of players around him than he did there. But so we could even see maybe he doesn't catch as many balls, but you add 2 to 3 yards per catch on there because of the nature of what they did. I mean, if you think about it, he's going to be doing a lot of the stuff that Chris Tyree and Tobias Merriweather did. Right. Those two guys combined. I mean, Tyree was inside, but as far as like take the top
ability
end
to push,
guy, right?
Ability to push. Yep.
He can do that. Well, those guys combined for 20 yards a catch this year.
Right.
And so I think it's a good fit because it's not just about adding receivers. You've got to add receivers that complement what your current room looks like.
Right.
And they're going to add value to your current room. And I think that's the observation that you made, Ryan, and that from what that guy told you is like, that's a skill set at a position that they need.
Right.
And now you can bring Cam Williams along and to where you don't have to force Cam into the lineup. And now Cam also has a veteran player ahead of him who had to really master his craft.
Yep.
Which is why this kid had a bit of a breakout this year, is because this is a kid that wasn't a show up day one and be a star kind of receiver.
Yep.
And, this is a guy that had to develop into that type of player. Now, he was a nice player last year, and I broke down a couple of games he played in last year, and he didn't play a ton early and had some injuries at times, but he came out this year a completely different player, and Notre Dame's not going to probably ask him to play 700 snaps like he did last year either.
They're also not going to ask. He doesn't have to be a 1,100-yard receiver for Notre Dame either. Like he doesn't have to have that on his back.
100 times last year, and that's the last thing is that impressed me too. Right, he has really nice ball skills.
Yeah,
has really good body control. Now, when I say he catches the ball away from his body, there's two ways that can be, and they're both good. One is just I am kind of here. Right. And I'm just kind of always here. That's fine. I like hands catchers, right? And there's a time and a place to body catch, in traffic, back, when I say body catch, your hands are always have to be involved. I don't like guys that catch like this. Your hands are always kind of involved. There's a time and a place where it's a body catch. But then there's second type of hands catchers are guys that attack the football.
Yeah.
He attacks the football with his hands, right? So it's not just always here, but it's like, I'm going to go out and get it.
Gain extension, yeah.
Yes, that is something that I like to teach. That's something that I think the great receivers have, and that's something that this kid has, which is why he makes. I mean, and he seems to have pretty good length, Ryan, for a kid that's around 6 feet, 6'1", 2, like a little bit longer than you anticipate. So you don't expect a guy like this to have the kind of catch radius that he has. Yeah. That's something that surprised me a little bit. I thought he was just going to be a pure burner. That's like what did he have, like a 70-something yard play against Arkansas?
Oh, where it was the after catch one, right?
Yeah, it was like
just kind of misplayed it a little bit.
He ran like he ran like a middle route. Yeah. But it's the guy misplayed it, but he misplayed it partly because the kid came to the football. Mm-hmm. So he, like the receivers coming here, he attacks the football. And all of a sudden, that guy's a little off. He makes a miss and runs up the sideline. It wasn't just a run over the top type of thing. So I like what I've seen. He had a catch like that, I think, in the first drive against North Texas, too, where it's like right in between three guys. He catches it, outruns some guys to the sideline. So he can do some of that. But his ability to win at the catch point is something that surprised me. Again, am I throwing 75 back shoulders to him next year? Nope. Right. But kind of the way that you did some of that at times with Kevin Stepherson, I could do that. I get a one-on-one, in the end zone. Yeah, he could do that.
Also a Florida guy. I think he's from Mandarin High School, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Well,
So,
he's John Mitchell's older brother, I believe.
Is he? Wow.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
So same high school and they kind of look alike. So
Surprised Penn State isn't begging down at his door there.
I
That's
had somebody
funny.
told me that somebody on the board said that Penn State's looking at him. But if I'm Notre
Okay.
Dame, I'm like, hey man, if we get you, can you call John?
Right,
I know
seriously.
Notre Dame loved John. Mike Mickens loved John Mitchell.
Yeah.
But he chose Penn State. But yeah,
Mhm.
he's a talented player. Notre Dame's not. I mean, there's work to be done there, but
I think Notre Dame's going to have a nice cycle in the portal this year.
yeah.
Though. I feel it. I feel it in my
Well,
bones.
there's 3 guys that we know about right now that we feel good
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
And then there's a couple other guys that we know they're looking at that if
Yep.
if you can get a couple of those guys,
Yep.
again, it's not going to be high numbers, but it's going to be because I feel like this year's portal class was very much a success.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a lot of people feel that way because Sam Hartman wasn't as good as we hoped. But I'm like, Thomas Harper and Javonte Jean-Baptiste were excellent portal pickups this year. Like excellent. They were starters on a top 10, borderline top 5 defense this year, Ryan, and very important starters on that kind of defense this year. Spencer Schrader started off really rough and finished really strong. So
Yep.
I think even though it wasn't, there were some guys that didn't pan out, that's always going to be the case.
Yep.
I think overall this was a very strong portal class for Notre Dame. When you look at it, it's just
it was underrated too. It was
and
underrated.
Sam Hartman not panning out is going to have a lot of people thinking like the portal wasn't good to Notre Dame this year. The portal was. You take Javonte Jean-Baptiste off this defense,
right?
It looks a little different. Now I'm not saying it's still not very good, but he definitely made an impact.
He was your best defensive end by the end of the year. I mean, he was a really good player. So
yep.
All right, we had a super chat from Raymond Harton. What's up, Raymond? Thank you so much, sir. What's up, IB Nation? Has the quarterback for the bowl game been set? Sorry if I missed it. Go Irish. It might be a more interesting question about the Oregon State quarterback depth chart right now, Raymond. But yes.
Yep. Well, Ryan, I don't know. We don't know whether Sam Hartman is or is not playing in the bowl game. Last we heard from Marcus Freeman, he said he was.
Yeah.
We've heard until he might not. I mean, but again, a lot of that stuff is just. I mean, there's so many crazy rumors going around. Like I just, so I don't quite know. We'll find out here as they start practicing more. We hope to have more word on whether or not he will or won't play. Sam Hartman will or won't play. And then if he doesn't, then what do you do? Yep. I mean, you'd think, Steve Angeli is going to start in that case, but my hope would be that Notre Dame would start him, but still have a Kenny Minchie plan. They need a Kenny Minchie plan if they're going to do that.
I agree.
But right now, if Sam Hartman's going to play, then you let Sam Hartman play and you go out and try to win a football game.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to for me.
It's still a much better situation in Oregon State right now, Raymond. I don't know if you were on the show when I said this earlier, but they're going to be down. DJ Uyunglele is in the portal, as is Aiden Childs are also in the portal. So they're going to have that Gustafson guy or whatever the heck his name was that started last year a little bit for Oregon State. I would anticipate that would be who's starting in the bowl game for Oregon State more than likely. So we'll see, man. We shall see.
But I like that one.
We had another super chat from Aiden Benami. Thank you so much, as always, for the super chat. Parents willing to throw hands. Once I heard Sean Davis explain the wide receiver room, and it was that bad. Just wow, that's crazy. LOL. Great rant, Sean.
Yeah, it was bad, and I don't really care what other people say. I mean, just some of the stuff I see. I'll send you a tweet that I saw today, Ryan. That was just so absurdly stupid.
I've seen a bunch of tweets, man.
Yeah.
I think I sent one the other day, right?
Yeah,
about BJ and
yeah. So there's just a lot of stupidity out there, but
it
is what it is. But you know what? That's in the past, and honestly, I'm tired of talking about him.
Yeah,
but I appreciate your super chat. We got a couple more from my den here. We got to get to.
Iden says, thank you so much for the super chat. We always appreciate it. Surprised to see on the board Eli Raritan passes Holden Staes. Didn't expect that. Thought he would be tight end 1. Any other reasons for leaving? The Marcus Freeman effect is here.
No, I haven't heard anything negative about Holden. I think Holden just wants an opportunity to be the guy, and I understand it. I don't like it. I don't like just the general nature of it's not working out for you after 2 years, so you leave.
Yeah,
I mean, a guy that played a ton, but
I would just like them to at least got his degree, right? Like, I mean, yeah.
But that's just where we are, unfortunately. But not every kid that leaves is leaving because he has like ill will towards the coaches or the team. Or some kids are just like, I love it here, but I got to get mine. I got to look out for me. And we very much have that now. I got to look out for me. I got to do what's best for me. And there's a time and a place for that. I think the nature of the portal time frame makes it harder for some of these kids to stay through the bowl game.
Sure.
Again, don't like it, understand it. Some guys will, but especially for undergrads, it's just a little bit of a tougher situation. But no, I haven't heard anything about that. And it's not that Holden's afraid of competition. I just think he's looking at it saying like, look, we're all going to play. I want to go somewhere maybe where I can be the guy. And even if he's tight end 1, he's not going to be the guy in the same sense that Michael Mayer was, because there's just so much talent around him, and he's not Michael Mayer.
Right.
So, and when I say passed him up, it's not like Holden wasn't playing a bunch. It was just kind of like you saw the writing on the wall. Like, and here's the deal. Holden had a great game against NC State. Great game. He had a big role in that victory for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And he just could never build on it. And you say, well, he didn't get a chance. Yeah, he did. The very next week against Central Michigan, Mitchell Evans was hurt, and Holden was the guy, and he didn't play well. He had a drop ball on third down. He just didn't play well.
Yeah.
He had another key third down drop later in the year. And then when Mitchell gets hurt, he doesn't step up and play well after the Pitt game either. Didn't really do a whole lot against Clemson. And so when Eli got his chance, Eli stepped up and made plays. I mean, and he was open on times when he wasn't getting the ball, and he was a much better blocker. That's the other thing too, is Eli Raridan and Holden Stace, you could argue, are similar pass game weapons as far as production, big plays. You could argue that. I think Eli's a little bit more dynamic. Holden's a little bit more of a receiver-ish type of guy. But when you counter the fact that Eli is a significantly better blocker than Holden, that's where it comes from for Notre Dame. So if you got Eli Raridan in the game, I don't have to sub out if I want to go with a power run game. Just keep going with them.
Yep.
So it's just like, but he said this is the Marcus Freeman effect. I mean, that's true. When you recruit like this, some guys are going to get passed up by better players and they're going to leave. It's just the nature of the world we live in. It doesn't mean that there's problems at Notre Dame's. There were clearly problems in the receiver room.
Sure.
The rest of the stuff we've seen is just normal.
Yes.
Normal portal stuff.
Yep. And Holden will have a lot of suitors. He'll find
he's a good football player.
Talented,
he's a good football player. I mean, and I've got no ill will over Holden. My issues with Holden's decision were more about just the nature of where we are in the college football landscape, more so than, gee, Holden Stace is immature, or Holden Stace isn't a competitor. I don't believe any of those things. It's just the world we live in right now.
Yeah. I just really like guys to get their degree before they leave, man. I just really like that. But not my decision though.
I'm hoping he goes like to Georgia Tech or something like that. I mean, because I really like what Brent Key did there with that team this year.
Was he committed to Penn State before Notre Dame? Okay. Yeah.
But he's a Georgia kid. So but he was committed to Penn State. Notre Dame got on him. He decommitted and came to Notre Dame.
And Penn State's missing a lot of. They're losing Theo Johnson this year and Tyler Warren. So
Theo Johnson's already done. Man, that his career went by fast. I just remembered him committing. It seemed like it was like a year ago.
I'm told Theo Johnson is going to blow up in the pre-draft too. Apparently, at like 6'6", 255, he's going to run like 4.4 something. Man,
no, Ryan, you're wrong. Penn State kids never go to the combine and blow up the combine. Never. Yeah. I'm being sarcastic there for people.
I heard he might break like the tight end record as far as like the relative athletic score stuff, as far as like the numbers he's going to post, which is pretty outrageous. So, which he will beat Zach Kuntz, who I think was also at Penn State originally, right? The transfer Old Dominion.
Yeah. All those knee injuries. Yeah, he was a good player. Notre Dame tried to recruit Zach Kuntz coming out of high school.
He was good at Old Dominion when he could finally stay healthy too, man. He was really good. But, right. Another one for mine. Thank you so much. LOL, I love to see all the peeps on Twitter shocked by all the news last week. All this was spoken about prior on IB and the boards. More recruitment. I don't know what that was.
I think it meant to be
news. More recruitment news. Maybe. Okay.
Here's the funny thing. So there was a gentleman, and I'm not meaning to disparage him because he says he listens to the show, and I appreciate all that. But he just jumped on the boards, and his first post that he ever makes was basically coming at me for the news about Chancey Stuckey. Basically saying nobody else was reporting this, so it can't be true.
I saw that, yeah.
And so I don't care to get into that. But then people start responding to him. Some people didn't respond well. Some people respond with things, and they're like, well, we knew this and we knew that. And he's like, he goes like, what issue with Caleb Smith? He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, maybe you're kind of should be picking up a pattern here, buddy. That all these people at Irish Breakdown are very aware of all these things that have been going on for the last year, and you had no idea that maybe this is the reason you should be on the message board at irishbreakdown.com. But the other thing too is like the people like Iden who have been around a long, they know when we're dropping hints on stuff, right? They know when we're like, we can't talk about it right now, but there's more afoot here than what you guys think. Yeah. That's why I've been a little bit more maybe forgiving of Jared Parker than I might otherwise be in a just a normal circumstance, because this is just one example, but there's a lot more behind the scenes going on that, if addressed, I think should fix some things, and then we'll truly find out if he is the guy or not at OC. And of course, but this was the big one. It's not even just from the stuff that was going on with the players, but also just the coaching was subpar. Sure. And if you want to run cover for that, go for it. But I mean, just watch film.
Yeah.
I mean, just watch the film. But I appreciate you, man.
Tom Connor with the super chat. Thank you, Tom. Did Tommy Rees have a big influence bringing in Chancey Stuckey by memory? Say yes. Am I wrong? I mean, that was the big thing, right, Brian? I mean,
well,
it was kind of a split.
It was more so John McNulty. So basically, John McNulty coached Chancey Stuckey in the NFL. John McNulty advocated for Chancey Stuckey to Tommy Rees. So Tommy Rees trusted John McNulty, who then trusted Chancey Stuckey. So it was Tommy. He had a big influence because Coach Freeman ultimately was going to let Coach Rees decide who he wanted. I don't agree with that. I mean, you're the head coach. Ultimately, you should pick who you want.
Yep.
But it is what it is. I mean, I also think that, coordinators should have a say. I think in this instance, he gave him too much of a say. It ended up working out in some regard because you ended up getting some good players. But, of course, half those guys are gone now. But, that was more of a Tommy Rees thing. But that was because of Coach Rees's relationship with John McNulty. And I think that's the other reason, too, why I think a change needed to be made is because the two people that were responsible for bringing Chancey Stuckey in are not here anymore. So it's kind of like, even if the personality stuff wasn't happening, the coaching was such that if there's someone you think is better, you should always be looking to improve. There's no doubt. Sure. And from what I know of Mike Brown, I'm much more confident that the receiving corps is technically going to be coached at a much higher level and mentally coached at a much higher level next year than they were this year.
Well, that's why I feel better about this, honestly, because there was obviously interest in going a different wide receiver coach route, and then obviously the influence there pushed more towards Chancey Stuckey. But it seems like right from the get-go, Brian, I mean, there's no doubt that this was Marcus Freeman's guy, right? Mike Brown. Like, it just seems like that's the guy he wanted. That's the guy that he had zeroed in on. And for the most part, like, Marcus Freeman's had some good hires. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust it.
Well, who did he bring in that he coached with at Cincinnati? See.
Well, Mike Mickens was already here.
But he kept him.
Yep.
And then Brian Mason.
Gino. Yeah.
And Gino.
Yep.
Two of those three that he worked with at Cincinnati are pretty freaking good.
Yeah, Brian Mason was very good. Yeah.
Gino's a bigger question mark right now.
Sure.
But the other two guys he brought in that he worked with Cincinnati, and then Jared Parker, who he brought in from, worked with the Purdue days, now we'll find out, what kind of OC Jared Parker can be, moving forward. But the one thing I think we can all agree on, he's a pretty good tight ends coach.
Oh, he's a really good tight ends coach.
And so again, just take the coordinator part out, he was brought here as the tight ends coach. I think did a pretty good flipping job at that position. And so just as pure position coaches, and he worked with Al Washington for a year. I thought Al Washington did a really nice job this year as a coach.
Yep.
So none of the guys that he's worked with have done poor jobs outside of, you could argue, Coach Gaduli didn't have a great year. But, to me, it's somebody asked me about the job that Gino Gaduli did this year. See if I can find that question. What's my thoughts on Gino Gaduli? And I'll be honest, I have a hard time forming an opinion on Gino Gaduli.
Same.
Because it's like, how much can you really break a 6-year senior technically, mentally? I mean, it could be Coach Stuckey, or it could be Coach Gaduli's issue. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know enough about the inner workings of it. I know that Sam Hartman struggled to read defenses the second half of the year. I know he struggled to get out of funks in games. Some of that was there at Wake Forest. It was. I mean, he had a tendency in games where if he threw a bad pick early, it would just kind of snowball. We saw that in his career.
Yeah.
But you kind of hope that there'd be some improvement. But I mean, how much of that can I really put on Gino Gaduli? I don't know. That's the thing is right. And I genuinely don't know. And so I have a hard time really kind of feeling, I don't know what to make of Gino Guidugli. I think next year is going to tell us a lot, but then it's like, but if they get Riley Leonard, it's like, you're in the same boat again. I don't know how to necessarily evaluate that. Now, if Riley Leonard regresses from what he was in 2022 and early in 2023, then you could start to say, okay, here's a problem, or we've identified a problem. But
I think it's going to be more Riley Leonard's system is a lot more similar to Notre Dame's than what Wake Forest was to Notre Dame's, right? So I think there's going to be a little more
with
translatable.
What we think Jared Parker wants this offense to look like.
Exactly.
I would agree. I think it's, to your point, Ryan, it is definitely an easier transition as the offense was in 2023.
Right.
So I think we're going to see Jared Parker kind of meet Riley Leonard more in the middle, because I think Riley Leonard is more of what Jared Parker wants in a quarterback, a guy that can sit in the pocket and hurt you, but also can do damage with his legs when things break down or some design runs. Because again, right now we've known Jared Parker to go after 2 quarterbacks, one transfer, one high school. Riley Leonard, Deuce Knight. These 2 things do not look like the top 2 quarterbacks on the roster at Notre Dame.
You could even throw Rizak's brother into this conversation, because he's also a dual threat kid that they're getting as a Anthony Rizak is also a dual threat quarterback from Omaha West Side that they're getting in as a preferred walk-on.
Nebraska's Mr. Football, by the way, this past season.
Really good player, man. I still can't believe that kid didn't have more offers, man. I can't believe it. I'm just all right.
I want. Does he have no offers at the division?
No, he has. So it's just basically the military schools and then a bunch of FCS schools. That's what he's got. Yeah.
Because I wonder if it's because, is he adamant about playing quarterback? Is that why?
I think he would like to. Yeah, that's what it sounds
that might be
like.
why. Because I look at that kid, I'm like, I would offer him as an athlete if I was like some Sun Belt team or a MAC team,
team at least, right?
Oh yeah, like, hey, we'll give you a shot at quarterback, but man, if you don't make it a quarterback, like, I mean, if Daquan Finn can play quarterback at Toledo, I can at least give this guy a shot his first freshman year.
Yeah,
and see if he can stick or not. And if he can, I can go have him play somewhere else. Did you see that interception he threw at the end of that game?
Daquan Finn? Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Rough. What a great win for the fighting Chuck Martins.
Dude, I couldn't believe it, man. I thought Toledo was going to win that game kind of handedly, because they were in Miami, Ohio had their backup quarterback into, and
Miami won that game handily. At least at the end, anyway.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
No, I know. You said you thought Toledo was going to win handily. I agreed. I agree with you, but it was the opposite. Miami, because Ryan, if we would have previewed this game, I'd have been like, Miami's had a great year. I love what they've done, but Toledo's just got way too many athletes for Miami. That's what I would have said before the game.
Miami, Ohio's got some defensive linemen, by the way, man. The Caden Woolard kid is a 6'5", 255-pound sophomore. He played at what's Tommy's former school, Massillon, or how do you pronounce that? Massillon, Washington, or whatever. And he's a good player, man. He's a really good player. So
I like Tommy. I'm like, Lake Forest? Oh, not Tommy Reese? Okay.
No,
He guns.
No, Tommy Guns, man. Come on.
He guns.
A member of IB Nation, not the offensive
Tommy.
coordinator at
Sorry,
Alabama.
Tommy. Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
All right. So we had Michael S. who says, who's up for strength and conditioning coach?
Don't know. I honestly have not heard a single name with that. And honestly, I haven't asked. Guys, I haven't had a minute to breathe. With all the stuff going on, it's like the strength coach is the last thing on my mind. It shouldn't be, because it's an incredibly important hire. Just anytime I'm talking to somebody, I just forget to bring it up, because there's always something new and pressing that needs to be discussed. But this week, as things kind of calm down a little bit, I'm hoping to be able to try to do some digging on that, and we'll see what we can find out. But Mike, and Michael's got another one coming up, but I haven't heard anything on that.
Yeah. And we had the next question. Michael also asked, college football is returning to Tramp Athletics in 1890s.
Athletes.
What did I say? Athletics? My bad.
Athletics, yeah.
Returning to Tramp Athletes. In the 1890s, players moved from school to school selling their services, even in season. Education was optimal. Back to the future.
Optional. Yeah.
That's what I said, didn't I?
You said optimal.
I thought it's optional. Okay.
It's all good. Ryan, for me, this is a two-way street, and it's bad both ways, because there's just this opinion that fans have, and it's understandable, that these kids are just jumping in the portal, and a lot are, but there's also a lot of kids being told to jump in the portal. They're being told they don't have a home, that hey, you're not going to play for us, you need to transfer. That's happening a lot more than you think. Don't assume that every kid that jumps in the portal is just some kid that wants an NIL payout. He wants more playing time and opportunity. He wants all these things. That is certainly true. And there's a lot of kids that are looking for that. But there's a lot of kids as well that are being told you don't have a home here anymore. And so, you've got to find somewhere else to go. So, yeah, Michael, I don't like it. I was talking with a buddy of mine today. I don't like it. I think that between the old system and this system, they were both broken. This one is more broken. I'm all for players needing the opportunity to leave. The notion that, kids have more freedom now. They shouldn't be stuck for 4 years in a place. No, they were never stuck. They were never stuck at a school. There was no rule that said you couldn't transfer. You just had to sit out a year. And I think there's a lot of merit to finding some sort of happy medium between the old system and the new system. I don't want to go back to the old system. I hate the new system. If I could only pick one, I'd pick the old system, but the old system was also very flawed. They need to completely rethink this because this is just not good for the game. But more importantly, this isn't good for young people. It's really not. Now, are there some young people that need to leave? Yeah, I transferred my freshman year. I don't have a problem against transferring. It just needs to be done a little bit differently than that's being done now. It needs to be a little bit more thoughtful. It needs to be, the sitting out thing gets rid of a lot of the tampering that's going on. And it gets back to rewarding you for graduating. As I've said before, one thing I would do is if you redshirt, for whatever reason, you can get that year back. Sitting out, you have to sit out. You can get that year back if you graduate. So like you play 2 years somewhere, you have to sit out a season, and then you redshirt as a freshman, and you go somewhere else, and then you have to sit out a year, and then you say, well, now I missed 2 years because I had to sit out year in the redshirt year. You get that back. We'll give that year back to you if you graduate. That's what I would do things. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to make this system better. I just don't. I hate the system that we're in right now, to be honest with you. I really, really do. Last super chat from Lane Stewart. Can Notre Dame talk Braylon James to stay or anyone else to stay? I think they can. I wouldn't be surprised if they reached out to Braylon James and talked to him. I don't know that they have. I wouldn't be surprised if they reached out to Chris Tyree. I mean, Rico Flores and Tobias Merriweather, those are done. Those are not happening. And I think reaching out to them would be sort of a waste of time. So that those ships have sailed. I mean, could Tyree be convinced? Maybe. This is a guy from Virginia. If Mike Brown's the hire, he's a guy from Virginia. Maybe he reaches out. I don't know. I mean, to a degree, I think Notre Dame's just kind of ready to move on with some of these situations. Not that they don't love the kids and didn't think they did a good job, but it's kind of like, look, you made your decision. We made our pitch to get you to stay. We made our pitch to convince you to stay here, not leave. You didn't buy it, and we're moving on. I wouldn't be shocked if that's kind of where Notre Dame is at this point in time with the younger players. I think that's kind of where they are, and that's. I mean, again, they tried with those guys. It's just I think that they're ready to move on. All right, Ryan, let's go to the. Let me see here. Let's get you over there. Let's go to the next one.
Right.
Let's get some Riley Leonard questions in here.
And VR says, what kind of timeline do you expect for Riley Leonard to announce where he's going?
Next week or two is kind of where I'm at.
I don't think it will drag out like a crazy amount of time. I really don't.
I mean, you got to remember, a lot of these kids are still in school.
Yeah.
They've got final. I mean, who was it? What was the coach the other day? They were like, so what are you going to do for the next 2 weeks? And he's like, well, one, we're going to get back and rest. And then two, our kids got finals this week.
Right.
So there's still that stuff going on too. And these kids are finishing up school.
Yep.
The difference with like Jordan Clark visiting and Chris Mitchell visiting is they're graduates.
Right.
So that's why they're making visits. Ryan, I'm going to just kind of lean into a lot of these Riley Leonard and portal quarterback questions next. Okay. So we can just kind of roll through them all as we get into them.
Jimmy McGill says, who are the needle movers in the portal that Notre Dame has a shot at? Riley Leonard and who else?
Well, I think Chris Mitchell is that kind of guy from the standpoint of not that he is an elite player, like he's going to come here and do for you what Marvin Harrison Jr. did at Ohio State. I'm not saying that, but what I mean by needle movers, does he make your situation better? And in that regard, I think he does. He makes your situation better because here's the way I look at it: if Chris Mitchell comes to Notre Dame and does what I think he can do, he's a good football player. and helps you. If Chris Mitchell comes to Notre Dame and is the player I think he is, but he's not a starter or not a volume guy, it means somebody else emerged to be that guy, and you're still really good, but even better now. And so I think he moves the needle in that regard. The receiver room will be better with him in it if he picks Notre Dame than it would be without him in it. So to me, that's the definition of a needle mover. Is he a needle mover from the standpoint of because he's coming, he's the reason Notre Dame is a national title contender next year? No, I don't think that. I think he can be part of a big-time offense, but I don't know that he's the driving force behind a big-time offense, if that makes sense, right? Like, he's not going to be Will Fuller in this offense is what I'm referring to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that Riley Leonard would be a needle mover if he is at least what he was in 2022, if not better. I think that is a needle mover potentially for the quarterback position because he brings something, and I think this is a part of the needle moving conversation, right? Is that Riley Leonard would bring something that you haven't really had in your offense. Just haven't really had it. I mean, you haven't had that dynamic ability at quarterback in a few years now. Like, you just haven't had that element. So at least consistently. I mean, we've seen Tyler Buckner sprinkled in when he's been healthy, but
Sean
like
Kaiser, a little bit.
For a long sequence of time though, you haven't had that dual threat element in your offense. So I think that he would be a needle mover. Are there any other quarterbacks in this system that would be needle movers? I'm not sure.
Actually have a question about other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that here in a second. But like some of the other guys that we're hearing about, I don't know, like Jordan Clark, is he a needle mover? No, I don't think he moves the needle. I think he makes sure that you don't go backwards. Yeah. If he's the player that you think he is, Ron, I know you spend a lot more time studying his film than I have.
Yeah.
So I have an early opinion, but I'm not going to share it until I've watched more. Like with Chris Mitchell, I've broken down probably 15 games between this year and last year. Right. So like I'm totally fine sharing going through every game. Jordan Clark, I watched like 1.5 games. Saw some things I like, so I'm going to hold off on that. I know you watched him a lot, and you really like him. Does he move the needle? No, but he makes sure that you don't take a step back at nickel, where I think you were pretty good at nickel this year. He makes sure you don't take a step back. And, so does that need moving the needle? No. But in some instances, Ryan, it's okay to make sure that the needle doesn't move negatively.
Sure.
Right? Like that's so, I mean, it's kind of, there's different transfers for different things. Are there some other needle movers that they have a shot at?
There's a couple wide receivers that could fill that void.
Do they have a shot at those guys? It's a little early for that. I mean, some of these guys are just jumping in the portal, like the kid from Tulane's just jumping in the portal. Does Bo Collins move the needle if there's injuries? Yes. But if everybody's healthy,
he just sustains.
No.
It's sustainability.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, does RJ Oben move the needle from the standpoint of, again, it's just like this. It's making sure that the needle doesn't go backwards after losing Javonte Jean-Baptiste, right? Like that's what it would be for me. So, and those guys are important. Those are important players to have. Are there any guys that I've seen right now that are like, wow, like is there anybody I've seen on the D line that would do for Notre Dame what Braden Fisk might have been able to do for Notre Dame? No,
maybe Walter Nolan, but that's not
but I mean, as far as they have a shot at, right. Walter Nolan could move the needle a little bit.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, guys, the needle is going to be moved next year by the quarterback, and then by what you develop on your roster. Like, there's no left tackle that, like, if there's a big time left tackle out there that could come in and be the guy for Notre Dame next year, I'd look at him.
Yeah.
But who is that guy? Those guys don't get in the portal very often, and when they do, they're highly coveted, and the price tag to get those guys is quite high.
Unfortunately, even if you get because I do actually think there's a couple good left tackles that are in the portal, but like they're going to be replacing Joe Alt. So regardless, they're taking a step back. It's not like you're like upgrading the left tackle position. You're just hoping that it doesn't drop off drastically is what you're hoping for right now.
But those guys are expensive. And that's the reality of it. And that's what Notre Dame is dealing with here. So again, Notre Dame in the portal is maybe going to get one truly big needle mover a year. Maybe. Yeah. It really comes down to plugging holes, finding fits, having guys can be really good bridge guys to what you have coming along. If Riley Leonard to me on my initial film study is more of a needle mover than Sam Hartman was. Like I said, I had to be convinced about Sam Hartman. Riley Leonard, and I say that because Riley Leonard can do more things outside of the system. And that's the difference with a quarterback like him and a quarterback like Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman, if the system is working, is very good. But if the receivers aren't playing well, if there's injuries at receiver, if the O-line's not playing well, there's not a lot he can do about that. Riley Leonard can, and that's the biggest difference. So that's not a shot at Sam Hartman. It's just breaking down the difference in that type of player. So, and Sam Hartman was great in the system he played in.
Yep.
But it's just a little bit of a different animal. Here's one. Here we go.
We had Pete who said, "Who are the best player comps for Riley Leonard?" That's a great question.
Somebody asked me this, and I said, "Look, he is," and this is gonna upset some people because this kid is just so alienated Notre Dame fans. But if we could just kind of go back to me, he's a more natural throwing version of what we thought Phil Jurkovec was going to be at Notre Dame, in my view. I think he's faster than Phil Jurkovec was, and he's a more natural passer. But as far as how he impacts the game, it's similar to what they thought they were getting in Phil Jurkovec, right? Mm-hmm. Like a big, tall quarterback that can sit in the pocket and make plays, but also do damage when the game breaks down. Now, their skill set is not a direct correlation. I think Riley's a little bit more fluid athletically. Phil was a little bit more physical and stronger. Riley has a little bit more speed. Phil had a bigger arm down the field. Riley's a more natural thrower of the football, in my opinion. So I'm not talking direct skill set for skill set comp. It's more about how they impact the game is what I'm looking at there. Beyond that, I mean, if you're looking for another, he's Deshaun Kizer without as much downfield arm talent as far as the way he can impact the game for Notre Dame, in my opinion. That's another similar comp, but I don't know that there's a comp that just jumps out at me, Ryan. It's like, yep, that's the comp for a guy like him. I don't really have one.
From a height, weight, speed perspective and ability to be a little bit of a dual threat, I kind of thought a little bit of Ryan Tannehill when he was at Texas A&M because he was a wide receiver early on in his career when Gerard Johnson was there playing pretty well, and he was kind of that kid. I was just looking up his rushing stats as last year. So he had over 300 yards, 5.3 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. So he doesn't run as much as Riley did. I mean, Ryan Tannehill didn't run as much as Riley does, but Ryan Tannehill was 6'4", 220, ran in the 4.6s. Like there's some similarities, I think, there from a physical talent perspective, potentially. And Ryan Tannehill was also like one of those guys that his arm was good. It was plus from a college perspective, but it was, it was solid to good on the NFL level. It wasn't like a howitzer, but it was a good live arm, like it was above average.
We have a portal question here, Ryan. Another portal question here.
Pete says, nice article on Chris Mitchell. Interesting prospect. What are some of the other names in the wide receiver portal that seem more intriguing for Notre Dame? Any chance anyone opts to come back?
I'll answer the last part first. And then, Ryan, I know you've watched a lot more of these kids than I have, so I'll let you answer the first part about some other names that not so much that Notre Dame is looking at, that we know they're looking at, but just some names that you think if you were in that office you'd look at. Any chance anyone opts to come back? Yeah, they can all, even guys that have put their name in the portal today, you can always withdraw your name. They're all options to come. It's always a chance. I just don't know that Notre Dame is going to necessarily go that route. Maybe they talk to Chris Tyree again, and maybe he can, the new coach could connect with him. Maybe they talk to Braylon James again. Those are the two most likely options at this point in time. The other two, as I said before, are not options. I mean, the ship has sailed, in my opinion, on those two.
Well, a couple wide receivers that I would keep an eye on if I was Notre Dame. I think, one definitely makes a lot of sense, and he's a graduate from Vanderbilt. Will Shepard, he's an outside receiver. He's listed like 6'3", 190. He's probably more in the 6'2.5" range, probably closer to 200. But he's that boundary receiver, big body, good catch radius, physical type of kid on the outside. I don't think he's necessarily a burner, but he's got a huge catch radius and he really plays through contact well. Another one, if Notre Dame's looking for a guy that's more of a dynamic space player, there's an underclassman out of Vanderbilt as well, Jaden McGowan, who's in the transfer portal as well. Now, he's small. He's more like the Chris Tyree size of a inside receiver, but that kid is dynamic in space. You can give him jet sweeps. You can throw him screens. He can make some work after catch. But another guy that really has popped to me that I've really liked watching Michael Pratt over the last couple of years, especially this year, is Chris Brazzell Jr., who's an outside receiver. He's listed at like 6'5", 195 pounds, 200 pounds. The kid is super long, The kid can run for days. He's like a greyhound playing outside the numbers. So I think that he potentially could take the top off a little bit. Again, he's an underclassman. I have no idea if he's even a guy that Notre Dame could even get into school. I have no idea if he's a good student. No idea at all. But I already mentioned Deion Colsey is really your only outside receiver that brings that high level length and explosiveness down the field right now, with Braylon James transferring, with Tobias Merriweather transferring. I think Chris Brazzell would give you that potential outside the numbers type of talent. But I mean, there's a lot of guys out there right now. I think that it's a really good wide receiver market in the transfer portal, but the two Vanderbilt kids and then Brazzell out of Tulane are guys that would have my interest right now.
Somebody asked this, Ryan. We have a couple more questions about Riley Leonard. Somebody says, any idea where things stand with Riley Leonard? I mean, they're pretty much where they were last week. Notre Dame he's their top portal option.
Yep.
There's some things Riley Leonard has to finish up at Duke. There's a couple other schools talking to him. We think Notre Dame is in a pretty good spot for that one right now. And then there was another question down here that I wanted to get to about Riley Leonard from Stubcast, who is literally, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to be nice. So, would you personally want Cam Ward or Riley Leonard? For me, Ryan, it's Riley Leonard. I think Riley
in
Leonard.
this offense, it's Riley Leonard.
Exactly. Yeah. Riley Leonard is much more of a fit for this offense.
Yeah.
He is, especially with what we know or what we think Jared Parker wants to do with this offense. Look, here's the reality. And there's zero doubt about this. This offense was Jared Parker trying to tailor what he wants to do to the personnel he had. That's what this year's offense was. We can discuss whether it was good or bad or whatever. That's not the point. The point, however, is that he's now recruiting to, and that's what you need to do, build the offense around what you have. Don't be that coach that says, well, we suck this year because I want to run this and we didn't have the personnel for that. Nope, don't do that. Build around what you have, but then recruit to what you want. And Riley Leonard is much more what he wants. Now, that doesn't mean that Cam Ward's not a guy that can make plays with his legs. He clearly can. I just think Cam Ward, to me, is more of like an air raid guy kind of guy. You know, where Riley Leonard, I think, is a better fit for what Notre Dame wants to do in this offense. They're both very good quarterbacks. I would argue, you could argue, I wouldn't argue this because I need to watch some film of a couple more guys, but you could argue that those are the two best portal quarterbacks this year are Riley Leonard and Cam Ward. You could make that case.
I think I would argue that. I think I would argue
which one fits what you do better? I think it's Riley Leonard. I think that's really what it comes down to for me.
Yep, he's better in this offense. There's a couple offenses that I think Cam Ward would be a better fit for, potentially. Like Cam Ward going out to USC would make a lot more sense to me than Riley Leonard going out to USC, for instance. Like that one would make a lot more sense. So
agree. Yeah, that's a good one. Oregon, to me, I would say I would actually think Riley Leonard would be better for that one than Cam Ward. But I think when you look at like Ohio State, I think Cam Ward would be a little bit better fit for Ohio State. I'm just thinking of some of the different schools. Mississippi State would Riley Leonard to me, or excuse me, Cam Ward, I think would fit that a little bit better. So, I mean, that's all part of it is you can say this guy's better than that guy or this guy's better than that guy. It's about who's the better fit for what you're doing of the top players. And I think that he is certainly. And I'll tell you what, man, that the quarterback portal board just got a lot bigger in college football the last couple of days, man.
Well, I wasn't anticipating the Dylan Gabriels of the world and such.
Yeah,
in the portal. But,
and there's a question about that I'm trying to find, Ryan. We'll jump into the overalls, but here was one here. I'll ask it. I'll let you answer it, Ryan.
Yep.
I know what I think, and I think people already know what I think. Dylan Gabriel to fit at Notre Dame? Is he just chasing dollars and hyping his brand? So I know you have a little bit of insight into the latter part. I think you can you share that, Ryan?
I can share it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
As far as a fit for Notre Dame, your thoughts on that, Ryan?
No, I mean he is a very scheme specific quarterback on the college level. I think he is perfect for Jeff Lebby. You know, Jeff Lebby is he's a air raid guy in the similar sense, right? Outside vertically oriented, but also heavy RPO implications and move around a little bit. And I think Dylan Gabriel in that type of offense is a good player. I mean, he threw 30 touchdowns this year. He ran the ball a little bit. I think Dylan Gabriel in that specific offense is good. For Notre Dame, I don't think he fits what Notre Dame wants to do. So I would be a pass for me.
Now, the second part, Ryan, about is him jumping in the portal, just him chasing dollars and hyping the brand.
Well, hey, he might end up getting some dollars out of the situation, but the situation that I've been told is that there were some people on the Oklahoma staff that were ready to make this switch after the bye after Texas. They were ready to put Jackson Arnold in to end the season because they're ready for Jackson Arnold to be the guy in Oklahoma. So this is just, I think, a simple situation of Dylan Gabriel was a Jeff Lebby guy. Jeff Lebby guy. And that's why he started all year. That's because that's Jeff Lebby's dude. He'd been coaching him since he was at UCF. That was his guy. Once Jeff Lebby left, I think it was all but a foregone conclusion at that point that it would be time to turn the page to the Jackson Arnold era. Because I'm told that a lot of people are very high on Jackson Arnold in that program. And so I think that that's kind of the big situation that's happening now. And I think Dylan Gabriel is going to end up, again, like Corey, to the, chasing dollars. Like, I think he's going to end up being okay in that department because of this move. But I don't think that this was all a Dylan Gabriel move. I think that this was mostly Oklahoma also wanting to turn the page a little bit.
And here's also the challenge that Oklahoma faces, Ryan. If you don't say, hey, Jackson, you're our guy, you then run the risk of losing him as well. That's just the nature of the world we live in now. So sometimes you got to make a decision between a 6th-year guy that he is what he is, and he's got 1 year left, or do we make the transition out of the younger guy, knowing we're going to have to make some mistakes and deal with some mistakes. But then when you combine that with the fact that there's a transition happening in OC, I think the timing was perfect for Oklahoma to make that decision. So I don't even fault Oklahoma for it in this particular instance, but it's just the nature of college football that we're in now at this point in time. A couple other things, Ryan, that there were some questions about this that I want to address because I strongly disagree with the premise, and I've seen this mentioned a lot, so I did want to address it.
Okay. We had SW2205 say, I really like Riley Leonard's talent, but can you point to a year one transfer that has played at a playoff caliber level? Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, even Joe Burrow needed an extra year. Penix was really good year one.
Strongly disagree with a lot of this.
Bo Nix was actually good as a first-year player,
yes,
too. Yeah.
Here's the deal. Just because their team wasn't playoff caliber doesn't mean those players didn't play like playoff caliber guys, and it goes deeper than that. And Michael Penix's first year at Washington, he threw for 4,641 yards, 31 touchdowns, and had 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 35 touchdowns. Yeah. And as a team, Washington went from having a coach that just got fired because they went 4-8 to 11-2 the next season. They went from 21.5 points per game to 39.7. So you use Penix. Now, however, I wouldn't use Penix as an argument for why Riley Leonard is going to work in Notre Dame, just like I wouldn't use Caleb Williams, who transferred over and played like a playoff caliber quarterback, because those guys were transferring into a system they'd already played in. I don't think those are fair. Those, to me, if I was going to use them as examples of why Riley Leonard could work, to me, that is, I'm ignoring the context that makes their situation different than Riley Leonard. So I wouldn't even use those guys. Here's a couple that I would use. Bo Nix is one. Ryan, I mean, because you've talked about this. Like, you were really down on Bo Nix when he came to Oregon because why? You watched all his film at Auburn. Right? Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a kid that the previous year had thrown for 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 picks, only averaged 7.1 yards per attempt. The year before that, he threw for 2,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, 6.8 yards per attempt. And then as a freshman, had 16 touchdowns and 6.7 yards per attempt. And then he goes to Oregon, he jumps up to 8.8. I mean, Oregon was good last year because of, a lot of it was because of the job Bo Nix did. He went from a guy whose career high in passing yards was his freshman year with 2,542 yards. His highest touchdown number was 16, to a guy that in his first year as a starter in a new system with an OC he didn't play with before, completed 71.9% of his passes, which was over a 10% jump from his previous career high. He went 1,000 yards greater as a passer, 3,593, and had 29 touchdowns. And he also had a career high in rushing yards at 510 and a career high in rushing touchdowns with 14. So Bo Nix absolutely played at a playoff caliber in his first year. Another quarterback that played at a playoff caliber in his first year who didn't have near the track record Riley Leonard did, Hendon Hooker. Yeah. Now, they decided to start Joe Milton for some ungodly reason that year. But once they finally put Hendon Hooker in the game, right, his first year as his first year at Tennessee, and he passed for 2,945 yards, 9.7 yards per attempt, 31 touchdowns, 3 picks, 613 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. His career high passing yards before he came to Tennessee was 1,555.
I was about to say it probably was sub 2,000. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was barely over 2,000. Actually, I think he was under 2,000 yards for his first 2 years, Ryan. So he had 1,339 the year before he came. And in 2019, he had 1,555. And then in 2018, I don't think he attempted a pass. He did not attempt a pass. So his first 2 years in college, let me see here, 1,555 plus 1,339 equals 2,894 yards. He topped that in 1 year.
That's wild.
At Tennessee. He had thrown 22 career touchdowns. He beat that by 9 at Tennessee. And still rushed for the same amount of yards basically he rushed for the year before at Virginia Tech. So you didn't lose the running ability, and you added a guy that could throw the football like a champ. So that's another example. Here's another example. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts completely changed offenses his 5th year going to Oklahoma. And not only did he play like a playoff quarterback, he was a playoff quarterback at Oklahoma that year. And I would argue that wasn't a great Oklahoma team. It wasn't. I think Jalen Hurts did a lot to elevate that team and make them a playoff team. And when we saw when they got to the playoff, how that was a very flawed team, that Jalen Hurts masked a lot of that team's flaws. It's not that they didn't have talent, but as far as playoff talent, that was not a vintage Oklahoma football team. But Jalen Hurts put that team on his shoulder, right? And those are just the guys off the top of my head that kind of pop in there off the top of my head as far as transfer quarterbacks that came in there. And in year 1, played like championship caliber, or like playoff caliber quarterback. So I think this notion that guys needed 2 years is just, it's just not accurate. And also most playoff teams don't need to go to the portal for a quarterback. You're going to the portal because you're not that caliber team. And so you need to go there. So it's a completely different situation.
Agreed.
Than what we've seen. So yeah, I mean, and there's other guys that needed 2 years. Quinn Ewers needed a 2nd year, but he was a young player. I mean, he was a redshirt freshman who should have been a true freshman in college. Remember that last year with Quinn Ewers with all his struggles. Yes, he was a redshirt freshman, but he skipped it. He had graduated early. 2021 or 2022. Last season should have been Quinn Ewers' first true freshman year if he didn't skip a senior high school to go to Ohio State.
Yep.
So it's a different situation because he was a younger player. So I think there's plenty of examples. And then, like Cam Ward needed a 2nd year, but that's because he was making the jump from FCS to Power 5. So every circumstance is different.
Yep.
Will Riley Leonard be that guy? I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and promise you guys that Riley Leonard is going to play like a Power 5 playoff quarterback next year. I'm not guaranteeing you that. What I am saying, however, is he absolutely has the kind of talent, and I'm more certain that he can play like a playoff caliber quarterback next year than I am that Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, or CJ Carr can play like a playoff caliber quarterback next year. Now, could those guys? Potentially, if they have a breakout, but I know what Riley Leonard can do against a defense like Notre Dame. I know what Riley Leonard can do against Clemson. I know what Riley Leonard needed Sam Hartman being Hercules at the end of that game for Duke not to win that game. They beat Clemson. And when he got hurt against Florida State, they were winning against Florida State when he got hurt. And he was doing that on one leg. So this is a kid to me that has proven himself. Does that mean he'll be a playoff caliber quarterback? No, it doesn't guarantee that. It just, if you're a betting man and you had to lay odds on if this was a Vegas thing, who would have the highest odds if they say which Notre Dame quarterback's going to play like a playoff caliber quarterback in 2024? Riley Leonard's going to have way higher odds than the other guys. Now, if we're talking about for the future, different story. Could Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr be that guy next year? Sure, they could. But when was the last time you saw a team with a true freshman quarterback go play for the college football playoff? Right. Doesn't happen a ton.
Right.
Right. So what grade are the 4 quarterbacks in this year's? So you have Michigan's a number 1. Their guy's a 3rd-year guy.
Junior, yeah.
Right. You have number 2 Washington. Their guy's a 6th-year guy, I believe.
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Quinn Ewers is a 3rd-year guy.
Yep.
Should be a 2nd-year guy, but he did have an extra year of college football under his belt. And then Jalen Milroe is a 3rd-year guy, I believe, as well.
Yes. Yep.
So
redshirt sophomore, but
right.
3rd-year guy, yep.
Right. So, you don't have any of those guys in this. And then the team that should have got in their quarterback's a 6th-year guy. The team that's number 6, Georgia, their guy's a 3rd-year guy. So, I mean, who ended up being number 7? Ohio State. There's a 3rd-year guy. So, I mean, none of those teams were going out there. I mean, so I could point to that and have more evidence of that this season than guys, portal guys not being that guy in year 1. So, but I've seen that a lot, Ryan, and I understand it. And I think because of the guys that are playing, because I don't know how many people paid attention to Michael Penix last year, but I'm telling you, he a matter of fact, right? He's actually was. Oh, and by the way, he wasn't nearly as good as he was this year, but Jaden Daniels was pretty freaking good in his first year at LSU.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he was good.
I mean, he passed for 2,900 yards and 17 touchdowns, only 3 picks, and he rushed for 885 yards and 11 touchdowns. He wasn't great, but I mean,
he's still good though.
He was a pretty good player for them last year. And when they lost games, I know he got a lot of the blame because that's just the way it is for quarterbacks. But Jalen Daniels was a pretty good player in his first year too.
Well, I mean, if you would let LSU fans run it, then Garrett Musmeyer would have been the starter to start this season, which would have been very
true.
Stupid, but yeah,
very true. I mean, yeah. But fair question. But I just wanted to kind of explain that because I have seen quite a few people bring that up, and it's because I think it's a fair question to ask, Ryan, because you need to be able to look at trends. Like, okay, you're thinking you're going to do something that nobody else has ever done. Maybe everything has to happen a first time somewhere. So I think it'd be a fair question to ask. I just don't think it's accurate.
Right. We had a super chat from Paul Olmstead. Paul, thank you so much. Sorry if this has been brought up, but I just got here. What is your take on why Kyle McCord from Ohio State jumped in the portal? Paul, if you're on the message board, you would know exactly why he jumped into the portal last week.
Paul is on the message board, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I can put it out in the universe. I had put a little intel on some of the transfer portal quarterbacks that were potentially going to be in. That was before even Riley Leonard was in, Cam Ward, like a couple of the guys that had even declared yet. I mean, Paul, basically, Ohio State wasn't sold on Kyle McCord. They just weren't. That's where you were. And they were going to be doing their due diligence in the portal. And I think there was kind of a signal of like, Kyle, catch the hint there, right? That they're doing their due diligence in the portal. They're not doing it to just bring in a young guy to improve the depth of the room. There was some serious concerns of whether Kyle McCord is that guy for Ohio State moving forward. I think there's kind of a mix in that building as of if he was the guy or he wasn't the guy. And I think he caught the hints. He entered the portal, and he's going to take his game somewhere else. That's what the situation is. It's very simple, man. Ohio State wanted to upgrade the quarterback room through the portal, and Kyle McCord decided that he wasn't a part of the future plans. That's it, man.
Yeah.
Nothing super controversial there either. I mean, it's just that is what it is. So
again, I don't love that that's the way it is nowadays. But look, if you're going to go try to replace him, then he has the right to leave. I mean, it's a two-way street, right? I mean,
I don't mind him making the move at all.
He's only making the move because they're using the system to go get somebody else. In the old system, Kyle McCord stays and he gets better and he develops. And I think this is a bit of a panic move by Ryan Day, to be honest with you. And instead of just coaching the kid up and getting him ready to go, it's like let's go try to find a quick fix. We'll see if it works or not. It's going to be interesting. There's no doubt about that. By the way, hold on a second. Justin Fields, I believe, also was a guy that wasn't he in the 2018 class?
Yeah, he threw like 40 touchdowns as a first
year. So, and he hardly played as a freshman at I just thought about this. He hardly played as a freshman at Georgia.
Except on fake punts.
Right. Well, that was still one of the worst calls ever. Goes to Ohio State, gets immediate eligibility, and he passes for 3,273 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 3 picks, and then rushes for 484 yards and 10 more touchdowns and leads them to a playoff berth.
Yes.
So, again, more examples of guys who were able to play at a high level in their first year as transfer quarterbacks.
Yep. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know we had a new question up.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I brought the question up and then started talking about something else, so that's on me.
Good. Big Hoss, watching Louisville play on Saturday just makes it more unbelievable that Notre Dame lost to that team.
Well, I don't think you got – just like here's the deal. Notre Dame did not play at their best against Louisville, and that was one of the best games Louisville played all year. That was not a very good game for Louisville. That is not, to me, a typical Louisville game. And Florida State's defense was playing at an elite level, because you and I have talked about this, Ryan. When you lose your starting quarterback, a lot of times what you'll see is other parts of your team raise their – that's what good teams do. The other parts raise their game. The Florida State defense knew if we're gonna win this game and dominate, we got to dominate, because we're playing a true freshman third-string quarterback. And that's what I think you saw. And you just saw that, just on that day, Louisville wasn't very good. Louisville's a good football team. But to your point, everything I just said does not change the premise of what you said, which is Notre Dame had no business losing to Louisville this year. None.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't disagree with that. All I'm going to simply say is that's a 10-3 football team. Like, Jeff Brom did a great job in year one. Great job. And there's some, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but there's NFL players on both sides of the football for that football team.
Oh, yeah. Jabari Thrash will get drafted. Ashton Gelati on the defensive line will get drafted. Probably Quincy Riley will get drafted. Like, yeah, there's some.
And if Jordan was a little bigger, I would imagine you'd think he'd probably be drafted too. If he
might get drafted. I mean, he's going to the Senior Bowl, so, I mean, he's getting a look. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's just the running backs getting drafted at below 200-pound threshold.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if he was bigger, that's my point. If he was
still
bigger,
might get drafted, though.
Right.
He still might get drafted.
But he's a dynamic player.
Oh, yeah. Great college player.
So those are things that I look at, Ryan, and I say, hey, listen, that's a good football team. Just like Marshall was a good football team. Just like Tulsa was a good football team in 2010. None of those teams had any business beating Notre Dame the years that they beat them. None.
Yeah.
So I feel your pain, but I also watched that game, Ryan, and I was like, I've watched a lot of Louisville this year, and I've seen them play a lot better than that. But I've also seen them play just like that at times. That's exactly how they played against NC State. It's just that NC State isn't as good as Florida State and couldn't take advantage of it.
I think it's very easy here, Big Haas. One, it's college football. Anything could happen. It's literally like, it's so volatile nowadays. But Louisville's a good team. Notre Dame was a more talented team.
Right.
Louisville played well. Notre Dame did not. And on that Florida State game, Florida State's defense played a great game. Great game. They were incredible in that game. But.
And to back up it's college football. Did you guys watch Alabama just bully Georgia for 60 minutes? That's the same team that a week before needed a 4th and goal miracle from the 31-yard line to beat Auburn.
Yep.
Guys, that's just college football. Nobody plays elite every week. Nobody does.
We're still talking about young men.
Unless you play just a bunch of crap teams. Michigan. It just doesn't happen week after week. You just don't see it.
Hey, man, they just keep winning, though. Yeah. Michigan team, they just keep winning.
Yeah.
Matt, 2011
Matt.
GT.
Thanks,
Matt says, for the website reimbursement fund.
I appreciate that. We need it. We're going to need it. So when the guy gave me the number, he's like, can you afford that? I was like, well, I'm not happy about it, but I think we can swing it. It's got to get done. But so I appreciate that, buddy. Appreciate that very much.
We had a next question from Fightin' Mike 87 with the super chat. Thank you so much, sir. Will Notre Dame look into Ohio State's Julian Fleming? We talked about that one a little bit. Played primarily in the slot, but could fit outside at 6'2", would have 2 years left, a senior academically.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate the question, man. I just wanted to bring it up so we could thank you for the super chat. But we discussed that. I would look at Julian Fleming. Ryan, if I'm in the way I would do the portal is I'd have my group of A guys and my B guys. The A guys are like, they can be difference makers, needle movers. The B guys, these are good football players, can help us, can provide depth, can provide maybe some leadership. Julian Fleming's in that second group for me.
Okay.
Chris Mitchell's in the A group for me. Julian Fleming's in the second group. There may be a circumstance where, that guy could come help you. But I think the other part that he makes is he did play in the slot a little bit, and the last thing Notre Dame needs right now is another slot guy. He'd have to be bought into being an outside guy for me. And he has played some outside, but he'd have to be bought into being an outside guy.
Agree.
And I don't think that
feel like he played a lot more on the outside in 2022 when they had 2021. 2021.
Yeah.
Because then they had Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson, who both spent some time in the slot at that point. So
and then last year he he would have played a lot more outside last year if Jackson Smith and Jigba doesn't get hurt.
Yep,
I believe because he was going to play obviously a lot of the slot for them.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the next one.
Right. Tyler Evans says, "What did you think of the Michigan reaction to playing Bama?" What was the reaction? I didn't even see what the reaction
So
was for those guys.
basically, there was just like this groan in the room.
Yep.
I was like, oh, they were watching the announcement. And I was like, oh. Now a lot of people that are spinning it for Michigan are saying like, no, they were just upset that Florida State got screwed over. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. But it's like you
Why
were
would they
thinking,
care? Why would they care about Florida State getting screwed over? Why would they care about
because
that?
they would have played Florida State.
Oh, gotcha.
Because whoever got the 4 was going to play them, and then instead they got Bama. So it was like, oh, it was like that kind of reaction. So I thought it was pretty fun. Now, keep in mind, a lot of the people that were doing that you could watch it. It wasn't like Chris Jenkins and Blake Corum and Will Johnson. It was the people in the room, the non-football coaches and players in the room as well. It wasn't. It didn't look like it was the players that were feeling that way. It was like the boosters and all those kind of folks.
Yep. We had Zach 3-2. Zach, thank you so much. Who do y'all, and this is super chat, by the way, thank you for that. Who do y'all think wins the national championship? I already put my pick on Twitter, Brian. I couldn't believe my mind went to this, but I sat down and I started thinking about how the 4 teams mesh together and the matchups that they're going to ensue. So Washington versus Texas, and then Alabama, obviously against Michigan. Very cool, like kind of matchups, to be honest, because they're similar-ish teams on both sides, and then you're going to get a very different team on the championship side of things, right? Like they're very similar. I think Texas has a very good chance of winning the whole thing. I do, man, because I just think I'm going to pick Texas to beat Washington for one. I just think they're a better all-around team, and then from there, it's Michigan, Alabama against Texas that plays a little bit more of a space game. But the thing about Texas, which I think is the biggest difference this year, one, Quinn Ewers has been healthy all year. He hasn't been banged up as much as he was the year before. I know he missed a couple games, but for the most part, he's been a little bit more healthy. He's been better. And Texas's run defense has been really good this year, man. Like they have a good rush defense. So I think if they match up against Alabama or Michigan, they're not going to completely shut down the run game on either side, but they're going to do a good job comparative to what some other teams could do. So give me Texas, man. I guess Texas. Texas is back. Some might say.
Well, I mean, they're a playoff team. They were really good. They're back. It's can they sustain it? I laughed, Ryan, because I know you didn't listen to yesterday's show. I know you had a lot of things going on with your kids, and I know you didn't listen to yesterday's show. I literally said in the show, your flag just came down, by the way. I said in the show yesterday, it's wild because what I like about the matchup is you have this. I'll wait till Ryan gets back. That was actually kind of funny. His IB flag came flying down. So I'm gonna let him get back in because I'm literally making the point to you. So what I said in the show yesterday was, I don't know if you're still listening.
Yeah, I was listening.
It was wild. I love the matchup because you have 2 very similar teams in one game, and then 2 very similar, and you have like 2 old school kind of throwback teams in game 1, pound the football, play great defense, and then you have 2 like modern offenses in game 2, and then of course you're going to have a contrast. You're going to have very similar in the playoff, and then contrast in the title game. I kind of feel like the winner of the Texas-Washington game is going to be who wins the championship. That's what I think. To me, Texas matches up a little bit better, in my opinion, against – I think Washington matches up very well against Texas. I think Texas matches up really well against Bama and Michigan. Does that make sense? Texas could have a tougher time beating Washington than they could Michigan or Bama, in my opinion. Because I think Texas has the ability to play in the trenches. And the reason I say that is if there's a vulnerability for Texas this year, it's if you have really good receivers, you can hurt them. That's what that's how Oklahoma hurt them.
Sure.
And so I think Washington's a tough matchup for them. But I don't think the other 2 teams present that same level of challenge like Washington does. And the reason I think Texas matches up better than Washington is I think Texas can better match up in the trenches with Bama or Michigan than Washington can.
Yes.
And
Washington's offensive line can match up, but the defensive line, I do not think.
That's my concern. That's my concern.
Yeah.
Although I did thought they held their own pretty well against Oregon, but it's a different style. Oregon's a different style of running the football than they're more, again, tempo and speed and outside zone and buck sweep, where Michigan and Bama we're coming right at you. It's a completely different animal. And so it's really going to be fascinating, Ryan, to see how this whole thing plays out. I say this, look, I have strong feelings about how things went down and who should have got in or shouldn't have got in. But if you take all that aside and just look at the 4 teams and the matchups, this is going to be one of the better, to me, semifinal games, at least from like on paper. These are 2 of the best semifinal games on paper that we've seen. Because you think last year was like you had TCU and Michigan. Nobody's fired up about TCU, even though I predicted them to win. You had Georgia playing Ohio State, which is a good one.
That was a great game. Yeah.
But then the year before, you had Michigan against Georgia, and then you had Cincinnati against Bama. I think those wasn't sexy picks, right? And then you had the weird COVID year, which was pretty good matchups.
Wasn't it Cincinnati, Georgia? It was Cincinnati, Georgia, wasn't it? Not
it was Michigan, Georgia. Cincinnati got beat by Bama.
Yeah.
Michigan played Georgia.
Michigan played Georgia?
Yeah, positive. Yeah,
okay.
They were both like Cincinnati was actually a more competitive against Bama than but Brian Robinson like ran all over Cincinnati that day. Because remember they came out against Cincinnati, just kind of like ran because they like completely avoided the perimeter against Sauce and Kobe Bryant. They just ran right up the middle at him the whole game. We actually watched that, Ryan. I think one of the guys that we asked earlier, he has his avatar is a picture we took together, I think, at that event that we had, because that was when Notre Dame played Oklahoma State. We had our little IB get together on the playoff day, so we were primarily watching the Cincinnati Alabama game. So that's why I remember that one a little bit more than maybe I normally would.
We had Aiden Benami. Aiden, another question. I thought we'd hear more about Charles Jagusah taking a big leap this year. Any word there?
Yeah, I hope to have more on this kind of before the bowl game. I was working on putting something together to find out how the young guys are looking, and kind of like we do during fall camp and spring ball and stuff. But no, I've heard they like him a lot. I think the only question is that there's a difference of opinion on where he should play. Yeah. I'm told there are some people on staff that think he needs to get a shot at tackle, and there are some others that think he's more of a guard. So I'm not quite sure which one that'll be. We'll have to find out. But as far as big, physical, athletic.
Yes.
Just he's got all that stuff. They're very impressive. There's nobody that I've talked to that's like, yeah, he's not quite as good as we'd hoped. Nobody. It's just more about what's his best positional fit. That's more of the question mark.
Sure.
That people have.
We had a question from Coleman Smith who says, how many scholarships are we at right now heading into 2024? We've got to be below 90 at this point, I would think.
We're getting close. So I have them at, I think, 89.
89.
But that's because I also made the 88. But that's also because I made the decision to take Maris Leofau and JD Bertrand off, since they both accepted invites into the postseason bowl games, and they did the same with Cam Hart. I assume that I'm going to be correct there, but they're at 88 right now. Now, I think the path to getting to 85 is easy. There's a couple offensive linemen that are going to come off. I have Joe Walton, Blake Fisher still on there. I have Michael Carmy still on there. I have Andrew Krasofik. I think we'll see some of those guys leave. I could see Kevin Bauman not being part. So, I think they'll definitely get under 85. I have Devin Ford still on there. It just comes down to how many spots can they open up for the portal? Sure. And then how many spots do you want to save? If you're talking about Notre Dame, you might want to consider saving a couple spots for the spring to kind of see how certain positions develop, and then you can go back into the transfer portal again after spring ball, because they've actually gotten a couple guys that were pretty good players out of the spring portal. Nick McLeod was a spring portal guy. He was a very important piece of the 2020 team. And I believe Chris Smith was also a late portal guy. He was a post-spring portal guy as well.
He was late. Yeah.
So some of those guys have turned out to be pretty good and important players for Notre Dame.
Yep.
Now, you're not getting like a game changer, most likely, in that situation, but a guy that can definitely help you. Yeah, exactly.
All right, we have the next question is from Pete Weber, Bowling Legends. Notre Dame finally announced a new president in Father Dowd. Any word on how much this guy loves his football?
No idea. I had a couple emails and a couple texts out to some people that would know, and haven't heard back just yet. So I have no idea what this means for the football program or the sports programs or anything along those lines. But I do know that Notre Dame reported that today. That's the extent of my my knowledge on that one.
All right. We have DMND13. What are your thoughts on the opening line being Notre Dame minus 10.5 in the bowl game. I'm not surprised. I was actually texting with my betting buddy about this line opening because, Dan, again, I mean, yes, Notre Dame is going to be down some players from opt-out perspective, but Oregon State doesn't have their head coach, who obviously is Jonathan Smith, who's taking the Michigan State job. They don't have their top 2 quarterbacks. They don't have their star running back, who is the engine of that offense. Now, they still have a good running back behind him in Deshaun Fenwick. Like, it's not like they don't have anybody, but the gap between Damian Martinez and Deshaun Fenwick is pretty wide, in my opinion. And this hasn't been announced, but I wouldn't be surprised, like, Fuaga, the right tackle, is a really good football player. Talise Fuaga. I wouldn't be shocked if he's an opt-out because he's going to go high in the draft. Jonathan Gray, the left tackle, is a guy that could be at a Senior Bowl invite. So there might be a couple more opt-outs aside from what we know so far, but being down to your third string quarterback, your backup running back when your offense is driven around running the football, and your head coach not being there anymore, minus 10.5 sounds about right to me, even though I respect Oregon State as a program, but they are they're in transition right now. It's a transition.
I'm also not touching this one because I still think there's more guys that we don't know are going to play for Notre Dame that are going to come out. So these things are always, I would never bet on a bowl game like in the modern era. Just no way. Should Notre Dame win by that much? Yeah, probably. I mean, this is not going to be the same Oregon State team you saw almost beat Washington. It isn't. Now the thing that I'm curious about is, do some of the defensive guys stay in because their coordinator is getting the head coaching job? I mean, you can maybe see something like that, but like you said, offensively and losing Aiden Childs, man, that's got to sting because that was their future quarterback, and I like him a lot. You and I talked about him on the show a year ago when Dante Moore decommitted. Some guys that we would look at if we were Notre Dame, and I do know that Tommy Rees. He tried, man, but he was locked in at the time.
Apparently,
to Oregon State.
Apparently, the word that's out there too, and this isn't like confined information, like it's out there. Apparently, Aiden Childs is most likely going to Michigan State with Jonathan Smith, and if Jonathan Smith's able to get him, that's a big get for him, man. Huge. Yep.
That kid is really talented, Ryan. Yes, really, I like that kid a lot. That would be a big pickup for him. Big pickup for him.
Sure would. I don't think there's a quarterback on that roster left. So,
and even if all those kids stayed, with all due respect to the kid they got from St. John Bosco, there's not a kid on that roster that's in this kid's league. Just God-given ability-wise, in my opinion.
Marcus Freeman's little leprechaun boy. Okay. What are your thoughts on Kyle McCord and Dylan Gabriel entering the portal? We talked about this one a little bit already.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this one, Ryan.
Okay.
Somebody asked this as well, and I'll try to find it. It was, here we go, from Chief Brody. How will Notre Dame look at Kyle McCord in the portal? So let's just say that Riley Leonard chooses to go somewhere else, to go back to Duke, somewhere else. Would Kyle McCord be a guy that you would look at if you were Notre Dame?
Not me. No. I mean, I have been on the wave of, if you're bringing in a quarterback, he needs to be a guy that can compete to be your starter and be a dude. Like, he needs to be a guy, right? I just don't think Kyle McCord's that guy. Like, I don't think Kyle McCord's bad by any stretch. I mean, he had a pretty solid year this year for Ohio State, but I would rather see Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr play than see Kyle McCord as a starting quarterback for Notre Dame in 2023. That's just me. Yeah.
Because
2024, excuse me.
The conversation that you and I had earlier about Riley Leonard moving the needle in that 1 year is not true for Kyle McCord, in my opinion. Because, I mean, I like Kyle McCord. He disappointed me this year. I'll be honest with you. He just wasn't what I thought he could be. Yeah. I think some of that is a development issue. I think some of that's just he has some limitations. He has some limitations to his game. Yeah. And he is a tough kid, and he tries, and and all that. And he made that big throw against Notre Dame, but that was after he should have got picked off. You know what I mean? Like, where he just didn't see DJ Brown at all. He doesn't handle pressure very well. We saw that against Notre Dame. We saw that against Michigan. We saw that early against Penn State. And I mean pressure, I mean literal pressure, not the pressure of the moment. I mean literal pass rush pressure. So to me, that would be stunting the quarterback development for a guy that's not going to get you where you want to get to anyway. Just isn't. And so with you, I'm with you on that one, Ryan. And I like Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord is got a guy. He needs to go somewhere that's got a really talented roster, and he can be a nice, good game manager. That's where he needs to go.
He can go back to Jersey, baby, and play for the Scarlet Knights. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Fran Brown, I mean, I wouldn't mind having a kid like
I
that.
give him a call. I give him a
Yeah.
call. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine Rutgers this year that they had Kyle Monungai at running back who had a really good year for them. Imagine if they had any semblance of a passing attack.
Yeah.
Rutgers would be a pretty solid little team,
Yeah.
man. They'd be pretty good.
He's doing a nice job there. Nice hire by Fran Brown too, by the way.
I love Fran Brown hire. I think that was big time, man.
Well, I meant his hire, getting Elijah Robinson to come be his D coordinator.
Yeah,
that's two strong recruiters. And I was explaining this to a buddy of mine. He's like, I don't like that hire. I said, why not? Was he not have any coordinating experience? I was like, well, A, yes, he does. And B, I don't care. I said, neither did Dabo Sweeney or Urban Meyer. Like the whole you got to be a coordinator thing is way overplayed. It depends on what you're looking for from a coach. If you're looking for a coach to come in and be a play caller, then yeah, you want a Joe Moorhead type. That's not what they need. You can hire coordinators. They need people that can recruit. That is a harder place to recruit to now than it was 20 years ago for a bunch of different reasons. Some of it demographic, some of it just the nature of NIL, some of it Syracuse just isn't, doesn't have the appeal at you. There's a ton of reasons. Fran Brown is a guy that has a good reputation as a position coach, but also a guy that is known as a very strong recruiter. Same thing with Elijah Robinson. He was a guy that was considered a very good D-line coach. I don't know what kind of coordinator is going to be. I don't know enough about him in that regard, but he's a very good position coach, and he's a very good recruiter. And that's absolutely something that Syracuse needs. So in that regard, I like the hire of Fran Brown. There's always some risk when you're hiring a guy that's never been a head coach or never been a coordinator. I mean, there's always some risk. I get that. But I just don't think it's the requirement that some people think that it is. But man, if you're at a place like that, here's what you do, Ryan. There's two candidates you hire if you're at Syracuse. Some young up and coming FCS group of 5, whatever type of coach, knowing he's going to come in hopefully for 3 to 5 years and be that guy.
Yeah.
Or B, you go with a proven coach who can freaking recruit.
And he can.
Those are the two options.
And he recruits New Jersey fantastically.
Yes.
So New Jersey, like the problem with Syracuse is that like New York doesn't produce a ton of talents, not a ton of football talents.
And Pennsylvania doesn't produce as much as it used to either.
Right.
Which is
New Jersey's a good football state. They produce good football. So
and
if you can tap into New Jersey
well at all. They
Exactly.
haven't.
Yeah.
They haven't. And that would have been my concern with Al Golden is Al Golden could have recruited New Jersey if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But the question would always be, does he want to be that kind of Fran Brown's going to come in there and grind. Yeah. He's going to be the Syracuse version of Marcus Freeman as a recruiter.
Yep.
Right? I mean, he won't recruit the same type of players, but as far as the impact of the head coach being the head coach will be your best recruiter at Syracuse.
And you need to start keeping some of whatever talent does come out of New York, and like Josiah Brown that is going to Penn State, the Notre Dame recruiter for a little bit. You need to keep that kid in New York, man. Get him to come up to Syracuse. Don't go over to Penn State. Stay in here.
Which would have been easier if they didn't make a change at offensive coordinator.
Yep.
But I think that guy's going to do well. I know you do. I know you're very high on him.
I thought it was great. I mean, he's got the ties. He's also obviously coached at Georgia. Like,
no, I was trying. I know you love the hire that Penn State made at OC.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the Kansas OC, Kaltenecki. I really like that dude a lot. Yeah. Kaltenecki. Irish Blooded. Do you know Marcus Freeman's timeline for announcing players sitting, or is there going to be individual meetings with each applicable player that can first? Just more or less what the process or time?
I would imagine over the next week. I mean, Notre Dame likes to and I get it, as best as they can with kids that'll work with them. And the NFL draft's easier than the portal stuff. They like to kind of space it out a little bit to let kids have their moment. So you'll kind of see it in waves. You'll see guys announcing waves is kind of how you'll see it. But
they are having sit downs with all the kids.
Yeah. When that's what last week was about. I mean, they've already had all those meetings. They've had all those sit downs. They've done all that stuff. Yeah. Now it's like, okay, guys are making decisions and you make now some of the guys are not sure. I expect Riley Mills to play in the bowl game, Howard Cross, Xavier Watts. I think right now though, there's a good chance those guys come back, but I don't think any of them have made a definitive 100% decision as far as I know. Because they're still waiting. Some of them are like Xavier Watts, I believe, is still waiting for some NFL feedback. Those decisions will happen more definitively after the bowl game.
Yep.
So this is more of going to be for the guys who aren't going to play are going to make some of those decisions here. Like if We haven't heard anything about Jack Kaiser. I don't expect we'll hear anything about Jack Kaiser till after the bowl game. It would be my expectation. Whether he's coming back, going pro, or transferring would be my thought process.
Joe Allen says, does the unorganized mess from yesterday's bowl shenanigans hurt the relationship between Notre Dame and the ACC? It looks like there will be teams leaving the ACC because of it.
I mean, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be in your feelings all you want, but it's really expensive to leave the ACC. I mean, you're talking, what, 9 figures, Ryan, I believe, is the last I heard, because of the timing of it. I think I saw something like past this week that it now jumps up to like 100 million or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So you can be in your feelings all you want about it, but it's still very expensive. But the way that the ACC just bungled this whole thing is just
it was weird, man. It was weird.
Like, I think Jim Phillips has done some nice things, but some of the things he's done and said, he's not as bad, but it's just kind of like, if you get a bad commissioner and you're already kind of on the brink, it could just, and I mean, you're doing dumb crap, like you're putting 5 names into a hat, which is the latest report. I mean, what are we doing here? You're trying to convince Bowles not to take Notre Dame, which is something else that's out there in the universe. It's like Notre Dame is your potential saving grace as a conference, and you're going to do something like this to alienate them. Why?
So weird.
So it just was so rinky dink, and it's just like, this is why your conference is going to die ultimately, because you don't have enough schools that are committed to football, and they don't have enough foresight to commit to football, because they want to, you can be a basketball school and still say, hey, we're going to make more of an investment into football. And you're just, the way it's run, it's just, you guys are not serious. And I was hoping Jim Phillips would be better, but just some of the things that he did with this and just a couple other decisions is just kind of really, really crazy. And it could potentially cost him. But look, the whole thing is some of these schools, like Florida State's hurting for money. I don't know that they can just up and get 100 million. Well, they're donors. If they had that kind of donor class, they wouldn't be hurting for money like they are. Right. And that's the whole point, is they don't have that kind of donor class. So it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be very strange. That whole process was very weird. Frank G
Agreed.
with the super chat. Thank you so much, Frank. With the transfers out of the wide receiver room, do the numbers of the wide receiver position change when it comes to the 2024 and 2025 recruiting classes? I'm guessing more for the 2023 class than the 2024.
Yeah, definitely 2025 more than 24. You were correct, Frank. I think, actually, Frank, I don't even know that we need to spend much time on your question other than thanking you. I think you nailed where it's at. I think it's going to definitely impact the 25 class numbers. They were talking about taking 2 for sure, maybe 3. I think now it's a guaranteed 3, maybe 4.
Guaranteed, yeah.
Is what, at least that's what it should do. That's what I think they should do.
Because there's 2 ways to look at it, right, Frank? Is like the immediacy is now you have to go to the portal, right, to get a couple guys for the year. But then after that scholarship frees up, right? Because we're talking about usually 1 year and done type of guys. So that'll transition to the 2025 class. Absolutely.
Yep. Good question.
Thank you for the super chat. I think I said that, but just in case I missed it. Red Bearded Eagle says, has there been any indication that one or more of the wide receivers entering the portal may be interested in being pitched to stay with the potential new coach?
I have heard from a source who says they heard it from a source who heard it from a source that Notre Dame is talking to Chris Tyree, but I don't want to necessarily say that I'm reporting that because I haven't heard it from anyone close enough to the situation. I don't know that they've made a decision on a lot of those, to be honest with you. I have no idea. And probably depending on how the situation's unfolded, there might be one that maybe the bridge was burnt, let's say, right? Where you're not even pitching a kid to come back potentially. I mean, who knows? So, I did see Chris Tyree was visiting Virginia today, I think, UVA. UVA, Virginia Tech, it would make sense to look at those kind of places. I don't know that. I think UVA would be really cool because Malik Washington was their slot receiver this year, and he had like 110 catches for like 1,400 yards. He'd probably seamlessly fit there. But I don't think the Virginia Tech would necessarily be what Chris Tyree's looking for. That kind of spread mobile quarterback. They're an outside throwing team. I don't know that would fit what they're looking for. Yeah, and then also depending on who their quarterback is going to be next year, you could see them doing a whole lot more RPO stuff next year. Like if that little short athletic kid's their quarterback next year,
Landria.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to do a lot more of that stuff. So you're going to be able to get Chris in space with some of the RPOs and reads and boots and stuff. So, I could see UVA. And if you know anything about the Tyree family, they're a very academic oriented family. And even though Chris has got his bachelor's from Notre Dame, don't think that the idea of possibly getting a master's from Virginia won't cross that family's mind as far as value, because Virginia is an incredible academic institution. Like Virginia, the state of Virginia is weird because, like in a lot of states that I know of, like Indiana, obviously the best academic school in the state is a private school. As far as I know, like of all the big time schools, the best academic school in the state of Florida is by far a private school, Miami. Virginia is different. The best academic schools in the state of Virginia, UVA and William and Mary, are both public schools. So it's a little bit of a different deal. But Virginia is in the state. If you're someone who wants to live in the state, a University of Virginia degree goes a long way. Like my dad was a process server for a long time, and I can't tell you how many people he knew that are lawyers in that area. And it's over 1 million people in the Tidewater area. Like almost all of them were like either William and Mary or UVA grads. Like a ton of them were. So those degrees go a very, very long way if you're from Virginia, which is where Chris Tyree is from. So it would make a lot of sense to look at UVA from that regard.
Yep.
Good question.
Yes, sir. All right, we had another one from Christopher LaFaro, who says, any truth that Notre Dame is playing at Yankee Stadium week 0? If so, is Army the opponents?
I don't know about week 0. I believe Tim Priester was the first person to report this like about a month ago. And we kind of had it on our board a little bit, Chris. We felt for a while that Army is who they're going to play, and we had heard it's going to be in Yankee Stadium. I don't know why Notre Dame is holding off on it. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be week 0 or if it's going to be later in the year. I have no idea. I wouldn't mind it being in week 0, Ryan, because then you have a game for your offense to kind of at least have a week to kind of get caught up with a new quarterback before you head to College Station. And then you'd still have 2 byes during the season, which would be nice. So I could see that. I don't know when it's going to be, but I do anticipate it being Army. I do anticipate it being in the Yankee Stadium, but I want to make sure that the credit goes to Tim Priester, who's, I believe, the first person to report that, but that was like over a month ago. And so we talked about it. So this is coming up now because did you hear the guy from the Sun Bowl kind of said it? He said, the military, like, dude.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
But in his defense, they went into that press conference or that whole process not even thinking there was any chance that Notre Dame was going to be playing in their bowl game. They had all the helmets of the potential.
And they didn't have Notre Dame.
Didn't have a Notre Dame helmet.
I know, I saw that.
Which is absolutely wild. Yeah. Absolutely wild.
That's crazy.
And just indicative of just the absolute you-know-what show that we saw yesterday.
Might have to get at the Yankee Stadium for that, though, if that is the case. But it should be pretty cool.
Do you want to just go as a fan, or would you like to kind of go as part of the coverage piece?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't even. I mean, it's not even finalized yet, right? So a little time to think about that.
Happens, just so you know, the game watch as far as covering it is literally directly through the end zone.
Oh, really?
So like where the press box is, so they have like the stadium. It's like so like if you look at you're at home field, right, Ryan? It's like the end zone going, it goes here out to the right, like out towards right field.
Yep.
And then you have all that open space towards left field. And then we're in the press box kind of right behind it. So we're kind of looking like right through that part. So if you like the all 22 view, the press box, if you'd rather have a side view, you might want to sit up in the stands. Either one works for me. I'll be there. My wife's going to make me go to that game, but she's going to make me take her like she did last time, which works because it gives her something to do because she's my photographer. So,
Very true.
But that was one of the coolest things she's ever done because she didn't go to Fenway in 2015, and she's always regretted it. So as soon as they announced that they were going to play Syracuse in the next game, she's like, "Don't even ask me if I'm going or not. I'm going."
Fenway's nice. Yeah,
it was
really nice. I haven't been to a live game, but we did the tour of Fenway where you got to see every part of the stadium, which was pretty dope up there.
Coolest thing for me, Ryan. I did two things that were really cool about being at that game. Number one, walking out of the dugout. I have a picture of me like managers do, like on the leg up on the top step, leaning over.
Yeah.
Got a picture of that. And then the other one was there was two equipment kids or something, managers from Notre Dame that had brought a mitt and a glove, or a mitt and a ball. And they're out there playing catch. And I was like, y'all got to give me one of those mitts, man. You got to let me. So I'm out here playing catch in left field at Fenway Park. That was just like one of the coolest things in my life.
That's awesome.
So yeah. And then, you walk into the green monster, like I'm sure you guys did. You see all the signatures and all the writing on the walls inside of there. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
The only bad part was sitting in those really cramped seats. But
Yeah.
that's another conversation. People were a little smaller back then, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. When in new Yankee Stadium's a whole lot different than Fenway. I actually went to old Yankee Stadium the last year it was in play because we were actually living in Colorado at the time. But I told Angela, I was like, I will never forgive myself if I don't go to a game at Yankee Stadium before they tear it down. Yeah. I'll never forgive myself as a baseball fan. At the time, I'll never forgive myself. So we actually went and watched them play the Blue Jays, which was pretty wild. Talking about like an old rundown stadium, but still, man, I didn't care. I was like, this is so cool. Mickey Mantle played right there, and it was just really pretty cool. Yeah.
Tony Stangl with the question says, "Is there any indication that Sam Hartman won't play in the bowl game?"
There's some, but not enough to where I'm ready to say he's not going to play in the bowl game.
I think it would be. I think it would be a. Again, it's his decision. He can pick to do whatever the heck he wants, but I think that would be a mistake for him not to play in the bowl game. I think it would.
Agree. Now the justification is going to be, well, if the two tackles don't play and he's got all these receivers sitting out, I'm like, I was like, but you're a captain, dude. Like you're a leader. Like,
right.
With all those guys out, that's even more reason that they need you to kind of to play. But
Agreed.
Whatever. I think he should play. Now, do you have a plan for Minchie and Angeli or something? Sure. But I think he'll play. Yep.
Agree.
Yeah.
Right. Next question is from ND Estimate Trucking LLC. What is your ideal 2 deep at linebacker for the bowl game if all starting linebackers opt out or if only one plays?
If only one plays, I mean, right now it most likely I think they all play, but if they were going to have 2 guys opt out for the purpose of the question, am I reading it correctly, Ryan? He's like, let's say only one plays. It would probably be Jack Kaiser that plays because the other 2 announced
accepted invites. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, what Notre Dame would probably do?
I can't believe that Jack Kaiser didn't get an invite. I saw him in a first-round mock draft before the season.
Well, that makes me
stupid. That's why you don't look at mock drafts.
Yes. Sorry. So stupid, especially before a season plays. What I would say, Ryan, is he would be the one. Now, what Notre Dame will probably do is move Jack inside, which would be ridiculous. I would not do that. But what I would like to see them do is keep Jack at Rover, start Drake Bowen at Mike, and either Jalen Sneed or Jaden Osbury at Will. That's what I would do. And I would play both of them. I'd play Jalen Sneed and Jaden Osbury at Will. And that's what I would do.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what I would do.
I'm down for that, man. I'm ready to see a little Drake Bowen in the game. I'm ready to see a little Jaden Osbury in the game. I'm ready for it, man. I think we're on the same page on that one. We had Nicholas Grosh who says, why should Duke quarterback Riley Leonard come to Notre Dame? Auburn has just landed a 5-star wide receiver commit and probably does not have the uncertainty that is Notre Dame's wide receiver.
Bro, they didn't have a single receiver with over 350 yards. First of all, Notre Dame also has a 5-star receiver. His name's Cam Williams. Okay, number 1.
Right.
Number 2, with no Tyree, no Merriweather, no Flores, and no Braylon James, Notre Dame still has a better receiver room than Auburn right now. And Notre Dame's overall receiver class is still going to be better. Yes, Cam Coleman's ranked as a 5-star.
Cam Coleman's very good.
And he's very good. I'm not trading Cam Coleman for Cam Williams.
Agree with that as well. Yep.
Not. And I'm not trading their other receivers in the class for Micah Gilbert or Logan Saldate. So this is one of those things like Nicholas, what do you know about the Auburn room? What do you know about the Auburn?
I'm looking at it right now, Brian. Camden Brown, Malcolm Johnson Jr., Caleb Burton. All due respect, I'm pretty good with the players side of things, right? With knowing names and stuff. I have no idea who any of those kids are.
Well, Caleb Burton's the kid from Ohio State, the transfer from Ohio State.
Okay.
You know him. Yeah.
Okay.
But still, I mean, your leading receiver was a tight end who had less production than Mitchell Evans.
Was it Rivaldo Fairweather?
Correct.
Oh, I like him. Yeah.
They have 2 receivers. Javaris Johnson had 19 catches for 347 yards. Jay Fair had 30 catches for 300 yards. Their top 2 receivers had as many touchdown receptions this year as Jaden Greathouse, who went 5 weeks without catching a pass. Even without all those guys, I'm not trading Notre Dame's receiving core for Auburn's. And guys, we did watch them lose to New Mexico State 2 weeks ago, right? We did all see that.
I talked to someone, Nicholas, that is not a Notre Dame beat guy that lives down in the Southeast. And I was actually talking to him about Riley Leonard because Auburn and Notre Dame are the 2 teams that are most associated with Riley Leonard. And this was his word for word quote.
I know Notre Dame's wide receiver room needs some work, but Auburn barely has a group of 5 receiver core right now.
Correct.
Barely has a group of 5. It's
Correct.
not good right now in Auburn from a throwing perspective. It's not.
And they found their Cam Williams. Notre Dame already had their Cam Williams. And
yep.
Guys, receivers are not the only position to catch footballs. Like, Notre Dame's got a way better tight end room than Auburn. Notre Dame has a way better running back room than Auburn. I just, I'm sorry. Like, that is just not, no. And then he has another question, Ryan. He says, is Riley Leonard better than Kyle McCord? Yes.
Much more talented than Riley.
Yes.
Than McCord. If Riley Leonard was healthy this past year, I think your opinion on Riley Leonard would possibly change. I'm not saying you, Nicholas. I'm saying the naysayers of Riley Leonard. And also, if he was healthy and you could throw him into Ohio State this past season, I think his numbers would have been pretty dang good, man. That's speculation, obviously. But throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., I know Emeka was banged up, throwing to Julian Fleming, throwing to Carnell Tate, Xavier Johnson, Cade Stover. I think his numbers would have been pretty dang good. Just my opinion.
Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers. Kyle McCord is a junior in his first year as a starter at Ohio State in a pass-oriented offense. Completed 65.8% of his passes for 3,170 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Right? That's his numbers in a pass-heavy offense, minus 65 rushing yards. So on the season, he had 3,105 yards in 12 games, 258.8 yards a game. With Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, Cade Stover, on and on and on and on.
Yes.
In Riley Leonard's sophomore season, his first year as a starter, he completed 63.8% of his passes, had 2,967 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Also had 699 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. So Riley Leonard, total yards per game, 282. Kyle McCord, 258.8. Riley Leonard, total touchdowns, 33. Kyle McCord, 24. And Riley Leonard wasn't throwing to Marvin Harrison, Cade Stover, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson in a pass-heavy offense.
Jalen Calhoun would be the 4th receiver on Ohio State, maybe.
Best.
Maybe.
Yes, correct.
Maybe. Maybe 5th, and he might be 5th in a punt returner for them. Like that'd probably be what he would be.
5th because he's a veteran, not because he's better than Brandon Ennis or the young kids they have.
Actually, I completely changed back what I said. He wouldn't be 5th in the punt return because they have another guy named Emeka Egbuka who I think returns punts as well. Like, yeah. No thanks.
Yeah, guys, look, I understand that there's frustration about what's going on.
Yeah,
but if you take your emotion out of it and say, is it a perfect room? No. But if you actually just take your emotion out of it and look at what Notre Dame has coming back next year at receiver and tight end, and then what they're adding at receiver and tight end, not even the portal, just what they're adding, Notre Dame's got a lot of weapons, way more weapons than Riley Leonard's ever thrown to, and definitely more weapons than he's going to have at Auburn.
Yes.
Or Texas A&M, the 2 options that people are looking at. And I'm not even talking about the running backs, Ryan. So, we can feel a certain way about what's going on at receiver. And look, I would rather Braylon James stay. I would rather Chris Tyree stay. 100%. I would rather Tobias Merriweather stay.
Yes.
But you also have to understand, guys, Riley Leonard, if he comes to Notre Dame, is not going to just sit back and let all these portal receivers just kind of pick what they're going to do. I mean, go look at who Riley Leonard follows on Instagram. Go look at who he follows on Twitter, and you'll kind of get an idea that he wherever he's going to go, he's got some people he'd like to go with him, or he's going to try to get him to go with him.
Yeah.
So in either case, Notre Dame is in a much better position than people think. Having said that, I have always said this, right? I would much rather still have the guys you have come back and have the guys that you lost. I would always much rather have that.
100%.
But if I'm a quarterback and I'm throwing to Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison and Cam Williams and Mitchell Evans and Eli
the portal kids are that you're going to get
Jaden Thomas and hopefully Deion Coles if he's healthy and whoever you get in the portal, like you're still going to be Micah Gilbert, Logan Salt. I mean, Caleb Smith. You're still going to have plenty of guys to throw to. Cooper Flanagan, plenty of guys to throw to. You just got to coach them up. That's the thing that they're missing. Coach them up. That's what Notre Dame needs. There's talent there.
All right. Next one was from John Leahy. Thank you, John. What offense would Chris Tyree be a good fit in? Where would you like to see him go?
Well, for Chris, I think Chris needs to find a place that can hopefully maybe expand his game, not lean into what he was at Notre Dame. And I think that's what Chris is looking for. Like right now, we know that Chris can be a vertically oriented pass catcher. That's what he's done at Notre Dame, right? He can run seams and posts and overs and stuff like that where he can use his speed.
Corners, yeah.
Correct. What Chris needs to try to do is get someone who can kind of teach him on some of the more refinement parts of it to where he can win in the quick game. Now, Chris is never going to be a shake and bake kind of guy, right? It's just not his skill. His athleticism is more vertically explosive. I think the word you like to use is like linear, I believe.
Linear. Yep.
Right. But there are certain things that you can do with him in that he needs to have enhanced: slant routes, quick outs, double moves, things like that, where just the finer points of the position he needs to learn.
Right.
And an offense that's going to let him do that, get him the ball in space. Chris is a good space guy if you're getting the ball in space on the move. Crossers, unders, bootlegs, things where he can catch the ball and then turn and run. Those are all things that he can do. What offense would that be? Honestly, I'd have to spend a little bit more time breaking it down, but I do think Ryan is correct. There are some things that Virginia does with their slot that's more of a vertically oriented type of offense, down the field, seams, overs, crosses, quick game, that I think would make a lot of sense for Chris Tyree. Let's go to this question. And Irish Blooded asks, Irish Breakdown staff, favorite Notre Dame sport to watch, see live other than football? Well, it used to be baseball for me. I loved going to Major League Baseball games. I'm not a big fan of baseball anymore. I just don't like the way the game has changed, but I used to love going to baseball games. But I still enjoy, my wife and I still enjoy going to South Bend Cubs games just because it's a really nice day. We get to, watch the game, talk, and, eat their pretzels there, which are really good. So that would be it. I've never been a huge basketball fan, like of in person. I think basketball is the one sport that I think is way better to watch on TV than in person for me. Just because it's the one sport you can see everything. That's really what it comes down to. You can see everything to me. Whereas, there's a few seats that are great seats in basketball, but like being courtside, that's to me, like, it's a great status thing. But I prefer being up higher. But yeah, basketball to me, I love watching basketball on TV. It's a much better sport to watch on TV than being in person. Now, I know people that I know say that hockey is a great sport to watch in person. I've only been to like one minor league hockey game and almost got into a big brawl when I was there. Some jackhole was running his mouth and saying some ignorant stuff. So my sister turns around and says something to him. He starts mouthing off with her, and can't have that. So I had to say some things. So we were about to have this big brawl, and his buddies stood up, and they behind me, I didn't know. And then my dad, I think, told those. My dad's a big guy, so he's a little intimidating. But I believe my dad told the guys kind of what their buddy had said, because he had said some kind of racist stuff. And when they told him what he said, they sat down, and then that guy realized, like, I need to shut up now. So, but I thought we were going to get into a little bit of brawl. It's my only hockey experience. That's all I remember from the game. I don't remember anything else from the game. So, but I've heard that hockey is a really cool sport to watch live. I've never done it, but so I'd probably say baseball is still probably my favorite sport to watch. Even though I don't follow the game now, I still enjoy going to the minor league games and such. Coach Koch says, what is the wide receiver rotation looking like for the bowl game? Well, if I'm correct in assuming, and this might be more wishful thinking than having actual knowledge of it, but if I look at it, and if Deion Colsey's healthy, you're going to have him and Jaden Thomas in the boundary. You'll have probably Greathouse and Faison in some combination to the field. You'll have Matt Salerno playing to the field as part of it, and then potentially Caleb Smith working in the slot or to the field as well. I think you're going to see at least 5 of them play, and then you're still going to have your 12 personnel stuff with Eli Raridan and Cooper Flanagan and Davis Sherwood as sort of a 3-man rotation. And this is the point I was talking about. Like last year, you had 6 receivers healthy for the bowl game, and one of them, Tobias Merriweather, got hurt in the first quarter and wasn't the same guy. You had 3 healthy receivers for last year's bowl game. And you have 3. So you have the same numbers this year that you had last year. A little bit more experience in some spots, but I'd argue more talent in other spots on this year's team. So when they went out and scored 45 points and had 500 yards of offense. in last year's bowl game. So it's one game. Like the receiving, the numbers they have at receiver are fine for the bowl game. You can't sustain that over the course of a season.
Sure.
But for one game where you have a month off to rest, you're fine. You're fine for that one game.
Yep.
And again, like you said, Ryan, Oregon State's not going to be the pinnacle of great depth either, because like you said, they're going to lose some guys as well.
I think Notre Dame's going to be in a lot better situation than Oregon State's going to be in.
Yeah,
based upon the early insight, I should say.
Coach Koch, any indication who might be seeing out the bowl game? We've just the guys that have transferred, and we've dropped some other hints. We'll kind of let those guys make their official. Yeah. Let's see here, Ryan. Here's another one from Coach Koch.
Coach Koch says, how has Antonio Carter developed this year? Will he see some game time during the bowl game? Any chance he starts next season?
I doubt it. I doubt that he starts next season. I don't expect him to be a starter next season. And just leave it at that. Yeah. Same. He's a guy that is a really physical kid, but I just don't know that he really is comfortable playing safety. Just don't think he had the feel for it that they were hoping he would develop at the position. So no, I don't expect him to be part of the safety rotation next season.
Yep. All right. We got JM Jonesy 80. Is Notre Dame. Sorry.
I was just saying, Ryan, you already addressed him earlier as a guy they may look at. I brought this up simply because I wanted you to just kind of talk about his game a little bit more specifically.
Yeah. Is Notre Dame going after Will Shepherd? Vanderbilt kid should be a fit for Notre Dame. Well, he would be a fit for Notre Dame, not only from the academic side of things, because he's also a graduate as well. So he is a graduated player. He's a fourth year. He's going to be a fifth year player next year. So he is listed between 6'3" and 190 and 200 pounds, depending on where you listed. He's a boundary type receiver, JM Jonesy, but he's not like your traditional boundaries as you would anticipate, as far as like a guy that's long and incredibly explosive and wins down the field with speed. This is much more of that back shouldered, big body catch radius guy. Like he does some really good body control though, and he really does a great job working near the sideline. So this is kind of that high extension, pluck the football out of the air, really reliable pass catcher. He wins down the field at times because, again, out positions guys for football, extends in the air. He's a springy athlete. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a former basketball player based upon how he plays, but he's a physical, springy athlete who has a big catch radius. So I like Will Shepherd. If I was Notre Dame, I would personally target Will Shepherd. I'd give him a deep look.
Yeah, I haven't watched him. That's why I wanted to let you be the one to answer that question, right? Because I know you've studied. Because you've looked at him but you've looked at him before. Like this is a guy that as soon as he jumped in the portal, you texted me like they should look at this guy. So this is clearly a guy you kind of had on your radar already.
I was messaging with him last year during his breakout year just because I thought he was playing really well. You know, like I was like, oh, you're playing really well. I mean, honestly, dude, if Vanderbilt could just like keep some of their guys with the program, they would be okay in a couple years. They just can't keep them. Like,
and that's the thing that sucks about the portal, because you recruit these guys, develop these guys, and then as soon as they have success, they just bail.
Yeah,
that sucks.
So you're losing Will Shepherd, you're losing Jaden McGowan, you're losing AJ Swan for there too, who was supposed to be their guy moving forward. So yeah, Vanderbilt they're not a school that's going to be able to. They lost to Ricky Wright, who's a really talented safety for them as well. He's like a 6'4", huge safety, really good ball skills. You just can't keep those guys around because they're not competitive enough. I mean, it just is what it is, man.
Did I see that AJ Swan also jumped in the portal?
AJ Swan hit the portal, yeah.
Did he get benched at some point in time this year or something?
I know he was banged up a little bit, and then I think they were rotating between him and the Ken Seals kid, I think. So, yeah. Gotcha. I know they both played this year, though. Just can't keep them happy, man. JHT 1988. Any concern Mike Brown comes from the same tree philosophy as Marcus Freeman? Seems like this could be a great opportunity to bring in a different perspective or philosophy to the room.
A head coach needs people to buy into his philosophy. I mean, look, you can't have 8 philosophies on your football team. And just because he comes from the same tree doesn't mean he doesn't have different ideas to make the philosophy work, but you need someone to come in and buy into your philosophy. Guys, I need y'all to hear me say this, okay? Hiring coaches that you're familiar with is not a bad thing. You have to hire competent coaches. The best coaches are guys that are competent and good at their job, but also know you and know what you're trying to accomplish. So you don't have to teach that. It is a positive that he comes from the Marcus Freeman tree as far as the philosophy. It's a positive. The negative would be if he wasn't good at his job. That's the only reason Jeff Quinn was a bad hire is because he wasn't good at his job. I didn't care that he came from Brian Kelly's tree. Don't care. Mike Elston came from Brian Kelly's tree. Bob Diaco came from Brian Kelly's tree. Mike Mickens technically came from Brian Kelly's tree because he coached him in college. He was one of the players that played for him. Mike Denbrock was from Brian Kelly's tree. That's worked out pretty good. It worked out pretty good for him in Notre Dame. Worked out pretty good for him at LSU so far. The issue was, again, he made bad hires. He should have never hired Brian McGorder, not because he was from the same tree, but because he wasn't a very good football coach. He literally had already coordinated the worst defense in Auburn history 2 years before, I think, 3 years before he came to Notre Dame. There was evidence this was a bad hire before it was made. That was the problem. Not that he was from the tree, but it was a bad hire. Those are my problems. If I could look, when I went into interview for head coaching jobs and coordinator jobs when I was still coaching, I had a list of guys that I wanted to bring with me. Why? A, I knew they were good coaches, and B, they were guys that I knew believed in coaching football the way that I believe in coaching football. You have to have guys like that. Some of those guys are going to be from outside hires. They're going to be at other places. But if you have experience on, hey, I know this guy can coach his butt off. This kid is great with relationships. This guy can recruit. And this guy could thrive at my position group. I don't care if he's from your tree or not. You go get that guy. And if he's from your tree, it's even better because now there's more trust. I know how he treats players because I was with him for 3 years and watched him do it. Guys, that's a good thing. 2 years. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that he comes from that. What you're referring to is to me is if you have issues with certain things, your offense is really struggling and it's not good and you need outside performance, there are some tweaks that need to be made to this offense. But again, this offense also did a lot of good things this year. They don't need an overhaul. And if anything, they were lacking. One of the things they were lacking most was you didn't have receivers that could carry out the things they wanted them to do because they didn't know how to play the game the right way. And when your two best route runners are true freshmen, like I have literally seen people that are supposedly experts argue that if this guy was a bad coach, why are the freshmen playing so well? Like, you don't understand like how that's not making the point you think it's making. When a freshman comes in and they're better route runners than the kids you had already coached for a year, that's not making the point you think it's making. That's actually pointing against it because that means these kids showed up better coached by their high school coaches than you did with these guys over the last year. That's not making the point you think it's making. And so you need a guy that can coach that position. And I don't care where he comes from. And the fact that Marcus Freeman knows this guy and trusts this guy, after what just happened with that receiver room, the lack of trust, the relationships, Marcus Freeman needed to make sure he's bringing in someone that can coach the position, but also develop the necessary relationships, Ryan. And there's no one that he's going to know for a fact can do that better than a guy that he's actually coached with.
You know what's really funny is that, the same tree, he comes from the same tree. A lot of the fans in this chat and just in general wanted Notre Dame to hire Luke Fickell. Right. And it's literally that tree. It's literally the same tree.
I have literally seen people complain about Marcus Freeman going after Mike Brown and saying this is why they should have waited on Luke Fickell. I've literally seen that argument get made. This is such a bad hire by Marcus Freeman. He doesn't have experience. This is a buddy hire. They should have waited on Luke Fickell. I'm like, are you literally that stupid?
You mean Luke Fickell that just went to Wisconsin and took Mike Brown with him?
Yes! who this guy worked for at Cincinnati. I'm like, you can't be that stupid. But apparently there are some people that are. Yeah. And it's just, JHT's not saying that. That's not at all.
Oh no, I wasn't saying it for JHT. Right. I was saying a lot of people wanted Luke Fickell.
It's though. Like it's wild some of the takes, and it's like you're mad that Marcus Freeman's hiring a guy from away from Luke Fickell, and your comeback is this is why you should have hired Luke Fickell to begin with. Guess who Luke Fickell would have brought as his receivers coach had he got hired at Notre Dame? Yep. Mike Brown. It just the whole thing is just sometimes I just want to run my head through a glass wall.
Just very contradictory to me, yeah. Like, because like if you were a guy that didn't want Luke Fickell, and then you're also like, don't touch that tree, then like, cool, okay, I understand you. You're from a solid grounding there.
Like my concern, Ryan, about this hire is more of the combination of him and Gino being together. with Joe Rudolph. Because here's my point. Like, one of the things that, Mark Stern said, I love the fact that Gino Guidugli and Joe Rudolph have coordinator experience. And my kind of my inside, I'm like, yeah, but neither of them were very good at it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not like you went and got David Cutcliffe to come in and just coach your quarterbacks as he's getting ready to retire. You hired a guy that was not very good at Cincinnati as the OC, who Luke Fickell took with him to Wisconsin, but did not make him the OC. You hired a guy in Joe Rudolph who might be a good O-line coach, but he was a very mediocre to not very good offensive coordinator. I don't know how much that helps. So when I think of that, that's a concern. But when I look at what Mike Brown does with the receivers, as long as it's Jared Parker's offense, I can live with it. So, I mean, I think that's some valid concerns. Like, and if that's where JHT's coming from, then that's a valid concern. But I think what he's being asked to do, I don't think it's as much of an issue for me,
right,
as it is if it was more of a coordinator role or something along those lines.
Sure. Right, we had Andy Milton fan. What's up, Nathan? Super chat. Thank you so much. Which players have had the most success transferring from Notre Dame and to Notre Dame? Is there still hope for Braylon James? Of course, there's still hope for Braylon James. Still hope. As far as turning into a good football player, is that what you're saying there, Nathan? Because I think Braylon James is going to be a good football player wherever he ends up.
If it'll be the same thing as Notre Dame. If he's willing to put in the work and have the right attitude, Braylon will be just fine. And that's true for all kids. That's not a shot at Braylon as saying he's not those things. That's just the reality of it. Best guys to transfer to, I mean, just the last 10 years. I mean, Cody Riggs had a really nice year at Notre Dame. Alohi Gilman was a great transfer pickup.
Yep.
Nick McLeod was great. Not that he was a great player. He was a good player, but it was a great pickup because if you think about what they would have had if he didn't come to Notre Dame for 2020. That was a really good pickup. Just trying to think of some other guys. Obviously, this year you had Javonte Jean-Baptiste, you had Sam Hartman, you had Thomas Harper. Jack Cohn was a very good transfer pickup in 2019 or 2021. So that was another really good transfer pickup that worked out really well for Notre Dame. Amir Carlisle was a really good transfer pickup for Notre Dame. He started his career at USC, which sometimes I forget that Amir started at USC, but I think he was only there a year.
Yep.
Because he's such a Notre Dame guy that you kind of forget he didn't start at Notre Dame. You know what I mean?
Literally. Yeah.
But those are just off the top of my head. Those are some guys that were transfers that came in. And here's a guy that left that I thought would have been very successful if not for injuries is Gunnar Kiel. I mean, Gunnar Kiel was playing very well for Cincinnati before he had that really bad, took that really brutally violent shot that knocked him out. Like, he was never the same guy after that, Ryan. Like, he wasn't. But that first year at Cincinnati, Gunnar Kiel was pretty. I think he had over 30 touchdown passes and over 3,000 yards that first year at Cincinnati.
He was good.
He was on pace to be a really good college quarterback at that level. Yep. And then that injury he was never the same in the pocket. He was just never the same against pass rush. And I understand because that was a vicious, scary type of hit, man.
Jalen Guyton ended up being very good for North Texas, and he's still in the NFL. Still in the NFL
Who's he
right
with?
now.
He was still with the Chargers.
Chargers, yeah. Okay. He's like one of the more solid deep threats in the NFL right now. Like, he just pushes the ball vertically. So
there's been some guys.
Yep.
There's been some guys. So I'm trying to think of some others, Ryan, that
transferred away.
Yeah, they transferred away and did well. I mean, Lawrence Keys ended up having he was Tulane's leading receiver this year, right?
Or at least second, one or two.
Yeah. I think he was at one point he was at least, maybe it was catches. He was number one in catches. Let me look that up. But he had a nice year for Tulane this year. Let me pull that up because I always liked Lawrence. He's a really nice kid.
Yep.
He so Brazil ended up leading it, but Lawrence was there. He had a strong finish of the season. I'll just say that. He had a strong finish of the season. And so he ended up passing.
He was great the last few games, yeah.
Lawrence didn't play last 3 games, so that would be why. He got hurt against Tulsa and didn't play last 3 games. So when he got hurt, he was the leading receiver because Brazil had 711 and Lawrence had 599, but Brazil had 196. That'd be 237 after Lawrence got knocked out of the game, out for the season. So he definitely passed him after Lawrence got knocked out. So he did some nice things for Tulane. Was much more productive this year than he was last year for them.
How about Dylan Gibbons? Ended up being a good player for Florida State.
Very nice player for Florida State. Yeah.
Yep.
Trying to think. I know there's been some others, but yeah, a lot of them haven't really panned out great, to be honest with you. And that's going to change because there's going to be more kids like that we're seeing now.
Yeah.
Look, Phil Dracovic was on track to have a really good career. I mean, he had a really nice first year at Boston College.
Yeah.
Just the injuries and then just how he handled certain things wasn't good.
Yeah.
But his first year at Boston College, Ryan, I mean, you had people talking about him being a possible first-round NFL draft pick because of that first year at Boston College.
Yeah.
He just went like this.
Well, he had third-round NFL grades after that season as well. So man, there was potential there. But
trying to think.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think some other guys that have panned out.
I feel like there hasn't been a ton that have left the program and turned out to be really good.
There haven't.
Well, he wasn't that much in college, but he turned out to be a good NFL player. Aaron Lynch. Not to open up wounds, but I know he wasn't great for South Florida, but he ended up being a good NFL player. So
I feel like there's been a couple other guys. I feel like DJ Morgan started at UConn, I believe.
Sorry, UConn. Jameon Franklin?
Jamion's had a really nice career at Duke, yeah. Did DJ started at UConn for a couple years, didn't he, Ryan?
Yeah, I think so.
And then the other kid, Jordan Genmark Heath, started for a year at linebacker at UCLA. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I believe DJ Morgan. I'm gonna have to look at this. DJ Morgan in his last year at UConn as a linebacker, 2019. DJ was fifth on their team in tackles, had 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 3 pass breakups. And then I think UConn canceled their 2020 season, right?
Yep.
And then in 2021, he got hurt, so he didn't play the whole 2019 season. But yeah, 2021 season. But 2019, his first year as a starter there, he was a nice player. Did some nice things for them in 2019.
Oh, Shaq Evans? Wasn't Shaq Evans Notre Dame guy too?
He was here here's Greg Olson.
Oh, Greg Olson's going,
yeah. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. And if you want to go back, like way back in the day, Dorsey Levens, Kent Graham. I mean, there's some guys like that, but just recently there's been those are the main guys that stick out to me.
Yep.
So good question. Good question. A few more super chats, and then we're gonna wrap up here. We're not gonna get to all the questions today, but
Jimmy Page, great guitarist, rock guitarist. What's your take on Bama +2 versus Michigan? That tells me, Jimmy, that Vegas is very split on that football game because a 2-point line is basically just a pick 'em line at that point. So it doesn't matter to me who's -2, who's +2. That just tells me one of these teams is going to win. Yeah. We're not 100% sure, and that's kind of what that line tells me personally.
We were asked about this on the show yesterday. Bama's going to kill Michigan, and I said, look, they could. But I think I'm going to predict Bama to win, but I think this is going to be a very competitive football game. I don't think Michigan belonged to end because of all the stuff they did to get there. But as far as like the actual on-field product, Michigan's a really good football team. So I wonder if that's Ryan that's frozen or if that's me that's frozen. So can you guys? It must be Ryan because Ryan just bailed or just backed out. So I think Ryan was frozen there. So sorry about that, everybody. We're going to get to some more questions here. We got a super chat from Michael S. Isn't Riley Leonard fragile for a dual threat quarterback? No, Riley Leonard is not fragile for a dual threat quarterback. He had a bad ankle injury at the end of this season where he got at the end of the Notre Dame game where he got rolled up on. And then that led to some other things. But Riley Leonard did not miss any time in 2022 for injuries. He played the entire season, was not banged up. He played the second half of the 2021 season as kind of a rotation guy coming off the bench as the dual threat guy. He had one bad injury, and that was a freaky play at the end of a game. So no, he is not fragile for a dual threat quarterback. Not even close. Not even close.
Before my my internet went out there, was my comment well received? I don't know if
about Michigan or
about the line.
Yeah, it was. I simply said, somebody brought up on the show, Ryan, last night that they thought Bama was going to kill Michigan, and I said I'm going to predict Bama to win, but I think it's going to be a competitive football game. I think it's going to be a good football game.
And they're too similar for one.
In Michigan, Michigan gets beat, but Michigan's not going to get killed.
Right.
In my opinion. Now, look, anything can happen. You could have some fluky stuff, and you just have that day. Like if Georgia and TCU play a week later,
Yeah.
Georgia doesn't beat them 65-7. They still win. They still win probably comfortably, but it won't be by 58. You know what I mean?
I think usually blowouts happen when they're like different styles of football teams, right? Where you're just like, I don't defend that style well, or whatever it is, right? Like Michigan, Alabama, I just think they're so similar that like it's going to be a close game, regardless of who wins. Like I just don't, I can't see it being like a.
Well, and neither team plays a blowout style against other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the two good teams Michigan played.
Right.
They were both competitive games. Look at the good teams. I mean, the best teams Texas played. They beat Georgia in a close. I mean, Bama played. They beat Georgia in a close game. They beat Texas. They lost to Texas in a competitive game. Like they were clearly the better team. Texas was clearly the better team in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Clearly. But that was a close game until then. You know, they blew out LSU. LSU's got a terrible defense. They beat Tennessee convincingly. Tennessee's a very mediocre football team. The game against Ole Miss, it was a 14-point game, but it was a competitive game. It wasn't a blowout game. It was 24-10. And same thing for Michigan. I mean, Michigan's only really played two good teams all year, and they beat one of them 24-15. They beat the other 30-24. And you could argue that the next best team they played this year was Maryland. You could argue that, who went 7-5. I mean, it's either them or Rutgers.
Yep.
And you know, they beat them by a touchdown. You know, Iowa sucks. I'm sorry. They're just terrible. So I don't even count them as the next best opponent. I know they won their division, but like Michigan is the worst possible matchup that Iowa could ever have, because Michigan is them, but with a good offense.
Yeah,
is basically what Michigan is, and they have a disaster of an offense.
You know what's wild was that Iowa scored 0 points, and I actually thought the quarterback played better than he has all season. What's his name? Who's so bad?
Deacon Hill.
Did you see Spencer Petras is going to Utah State, by the way? I don't know if you saw that one. Yeah, he's going to Utah State, man.
I mean, Ryan, I'm going to read to you Deacon Hill's yards per pass attempt in his starts.
I've seen it. Yeah.
4.3.
Yep.
5.2.
Yep.
2.6.
Yep.
4.1. 4.3. 7.2. 5.8. 3.4, 3.8. Now, I want to make sure that I'm clear to you all. I didn't read you his rushing yards per attempt. That's not even good rushing as a rusher.
It's even
worse.
That's
passing yards per attempt.
Yep.
This is why this is always the you know, we've talked about how I just think it's kind of misguided to just say because a guy worked for another guy or your friends or whatever, you shouldn't hire a guy. But here's the danger when you hire someone you know. And especially when it's your child, it can be harder to fire someone. Brian Ferentz deserved to be fired for his performance years ago.
Right.
But he didn't do it because his dad's the head coach. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, how do you justify going home to your wife and saying, by the way, I got to fire our son? You know what I mean?
Tough,
and plus,
man.
it's your son. It's your son. And so it's why you got to be real careful when you make those kind of moves. And you got to have some serious, I mean, you know, well, Brian Ferentz should love his dad enough to quit. I'm like, well, Brian Ferentz is more of a competitor than that. I think Brian Ferentz wants to do a better job. I think Brian Ferentz thought he was going to do a good job. He's just not good.
Right.
You know?
Oh, Brian. Michael S. And that's a Ferentz, not a Brian.
Yeah,
Driscoll. I know.
Michael
S. says, super chat. Thank you so much. Who's the second option if Riley Leonard doesn't come? It's a great question.
I don't think they have one right now.
I know. I was about to say, like, I'm sure they've been doing their due diligence on some guys, but like, I have no idea who they. It's
Kenny
Riley
Minchie?
Leonard, and then
Kenny Minchie.
Yeah, probably. Jimmy Page, love the humor here. Music is my passion, but Notre Dame football is next. Love that. Love it.
Here's a couple more.
Okay. He had W.O. Lewis. Is tight end a position that Notre Dame will look at in the portal now? Oh, they don't have to, right? Numbers wise, like,
well,
fine.
I think there's some concern in this regard, Ryan, because Mitchell Evans is going to probably miss the first part of the year.
Sure.
And Eli Raridan has an injury history, and then you've got Cooper Flanagan, possibly Davis Sherwood, and then Jack Larson. So in some ways, like, look, if you have another injury to you know, a tight end next year early in the season, your numbers are going to be a little tight. But
sure,
there's things Notre Dame can do and still be okay. 11 personnel, 21 personnel, things like that. So it's just about, look, get those guys healthy. That's the key. Now, if somebody gets hurt in the spring, then I think you're going to see Notre Dame have to go to the portal in the post-spring portal period.
Sure.
But for right now, or if let's say Mitchell Evans has a setback, you may need to go to the portal for a veteran. But there's also some decent tight ends on the roster, and this is what Henry Garrity. I mean, he's probably still a year away, but like
Charlie Selma still on the roster.
Yeah, he was hurt. Justin Fisher can do some Davis Sherwood type things.
Yeah.
So and again, you're just talking about getting you through some games and things along those lines. Is really what the focus is on those type of things.
Sure. Right. Irish Eagle 90 says, do you guys think Bronte Johnson should be part of the safety rotation in year one?
He earns it. I mean, Bronte's skinny, and he's going to need a really good offseason in the weight room.
Athletically, though, he can do it. But,
sure.
I mean, technically and weight-wise, just physically,
right.
Yeah.
Right. That'll be a much bigger question.
A little time. But the long-term dividends could be fantastic.
Oh, it's worth yes, correct. If you think he can physically hold up as a freshman in some role, special teams, whatever, then you play him.
Yep.
But he's probably just going to need a year to physically develop. But like you said, Ryan, the movement skills, things like that, the willingness for he's a skinny kid, but he's a willing hitter. He's not just a runner that, won't stick. He's a willing hitter.
Yes. Ryan Prott says, how would you go about fixing Iowa's putrid offense? Curious to see what you would do.
I mean, honestly, this is not meant to be disrespectful. This is an honest answer.
Yep.
Hire a better offensive coordinator and let him build the staff and recruit to that talent. I mean, look, Iowa doesn't have terrible players. They don't. They have a terrible offensive coordinator.
I actually like their one running back, man. The running back's not bad.
Yeah. And then Caleb Brown's a kid that I wanted at Notre Dame. And before he got hurt, Eric All's a good player. I mean, they got good tight ends. Yep. They had good athletes last year. I mean, they had that one kid that left Iowa to go to Purdue, and he becomes a dude, Charlie Jones. He did almost nothing at Iowa as a pass catcher. Why? Because the coaching was poor. I mean, their talent's not great, especially up front. It's not as what it used to be.
It's not the
same. But they're not this bad. They're not even close to this bad. If they went out and hired a good offensive coordinator and revamped the entire staff, basically, they could jump 10 points next year. If they can find somebody play quarterback, because I don't know who they're going to quarterback. They could jump to 27, 28 points per game next year.
Marco Linez is in there, man. Get some Linez.
He's a Jersey kid. But the point is, Ryan, is their talent is not 18 point per game talent.
No, it's not.
It's literally you have one of the worst off, and it's what I'm. It's not. He's just a bad play caller. It's poor design. He has no feel for calling plays. They're clearly not prepared.
He ran the ball on 2nd and 14.
I mean, it just.
What do you want me to say about that?
No feel for the game whatsoever as a play caller. None.
Yep.
And I mean, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he's just as goes. Not every good position coach is a good coordinator. He is an awful coordinator.
They were down 10-0, playing competitive football, especially defensively, and it was 3rd and 8, and they decided to run the ball on a lead draw and did not get the first down, and they were close to midfield. I was like, dang, they don't even want to win. Well, rephrase. Offensively, they are not capable of winning this football game from just a strategy perspective. They have no chance.
They were going to need multiple special teams and defensive scores. I mean, honestly, if they picked off a pass and ran it back to 11, you're like, well, field goal. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It's just...
Their over-under on that football game was 6.5, and they hit the under comfortably.
I think when you texted me that, I think I said I'd take the under. I think I texted I'd take the under, and I think you said I thought you agreed with me, but when I saw that, I was like, "You got to be kidding!"
What I said, man, it was such a joke of line. You know what their line was in the first half? It was either 0.5 points or 1.5 points in the first half was the over under for Iowa team total.
That's crazy.
It's insane, man. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Nicholas Grosh, guys, what is the plus of starting Steve Angeli in the Sun Bowl, or should we start our 6-year vet, and why?
Well, here's a plus for 6-year vet is he gives you a better chance to win.
That's very true,
in my opinion. Is there a plus to starting Steve Angeli? Yeah, I mean, if you start Steve Angeli there's pluses for Steve. It gives him experience. It lets him be better prepared if he's called upon to start next year. It certainly benefits for Steve. Are there pluses to the football team? Not really. I mean, if you go win a football game, that's a plus. I mean, I don't know. And what I mean by that is this sounds very anti-Steve Angeli, and I'm not meaning it to be. It just you need to do what you need to do to win a football game. Maybe Steve Angeli can help you go beat Oregon State, but I'm confident that Sam Hartman can help you go beat Oregon State. Pretty confident in that. One thing I'd say is if your tackles don't play, Steve brings you a little bit more mobility, but would he have the same feel in the pocket? I don't know the answer to that. That's a whole different animal.
Because that's an experience thing.
Yeah.
That's not really an athletic thing. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, you would get a full game of understanding what you have exactly in Steve Angeli, because I know, there's obviously some people that like Steve Angeli, but like you've only seen it mostly in practice reps and then mop-up duty. You would get a full game of understanding exactly what you might have there, but I'm in favor of Sam Hartman playing if Sam Hartman can play, though.
Yep, if he's willing to. All right. I'll ask this one, Ryan, because you know a lot more about him than I do. Should Notre Dame take a look at Samson Okunlola from Pitt?
Well, they can't take a look from Samson Okunlola for Pitt because that is the offensive tackle that plays in Miami. We're talking about Samuel Okunlola, obviously joking. Is he in the portal? I mean, I know he led them in sacks this year, but I haven't watched him extensively. I know he's 6'4", like 240, I think was what he was listed at. And you think he's a redshirt freshman. He looked pretty talented, but I haven't watched enough for me to have like a deep understanding of like, yes, go after that guy. I'm not 100% sure.
Yep. Wow. I just saw this come across. Is this real? Let me look and see if this is real.
Uh-oh.
Yes, this is a guy that tweets out lacrosse. Tyler Buckner has entered the NCAA transfer portal for lacrosse.
He's a great lacrosse player, right? So,
but that says so much about why Tyler Buckner was never the quarterback he should have been. That says so much. He got some really bad advice.
Hey, Notre Dame has a good lacrosse team, right?
Yes. I would not be surprised if he did. His sister goes to school here. I would not be surprised about that at all.
I'd be completely fine if Tyler came back to play lacrosse. Completely fine with it. 100%.
I like Tyler. I think he's a great kid. I think he got really bad advice. I've never heard anyone say a bad thing. The only bad thing anyone ever said to me about Tyler Buckner is one guy was like, he spends too much time with his girlfriend. That's literally the worst thing anyone's ever said to me about Tyler Buckner as a young man.
There could be worse things in the world.
Way worse things. He has a girl he likes spending time with. Oh my God, the horrible kid that he is. You know what I mean? Like, oh shoot, he's not out at parties drinking and smoking. He spent time with his girlfriend. Oh, what a bastard. You know what I mean? Like, never heard anyone say a bad thing about Tyler Buckner as a kid. No. So if he wants to come back to Notre Dame, it's fine. I'd even say, hey man, why don't you come with us during fall camp and you can run the triple option for Army, and then we'll let you go back to the lacrosse team.
Man, he would be great for Army, man.
Yeah.
If his body could hold up, he'd be great. Yeah.
So I like Tyler, and I know he gets. We've got to be able to take away the difference between what a guy was as a football player as a young person. Yeah. And I get the frustration people have as a football player. Agree to disagree. Tyler's a really good kid. And I wish he would have stayed at Notre Dame or made a smarter transfer decision. That was just not going to work. We've said time like, look, I think there's places Tyler Buckner could play. Yeah. I don't get that one.
That Alabama was always weird, man. Always weird.
It's never made sense.
I was like, if he goes like TCU or something, I'd be like, oh, I can get that one, right? Like Alabama, it didn't make any sense. Oh, man. Brandon Blends in there. What's up, Brandon? What's the word on Blake Fisher? Is there seriously a good likelihood he leaves for the draft? You think that'd be a big mistake, in my opinion? I agree with the last part.
Yeah. Everything I've heard, I haven't heard an official announcement yet, but I have no expectation that Blake Fisher is going to be on the football team next year based on what I've been told. And
so gross, man. It's gross.
I just think that's a very poor decision.
Yes.
I mean, does he have the potential to be a guy that could be a day 2 draft pick or yeah, sure. I mean, he regressed from last year, and he regressed from the middle of the season. I do not understand this one at all.
Yeah,
like Ryan, I've yet to have anyone try to explain to me why this is a smart decision.
I haven't asked anybody, Brian, on the NFL side about Blake because I just kind of assumed he wouldn't do it. But if he does enter, I think it's a mistake for one, and for two, I would be shocked if he's getting good feedback from the NFL. I'd be shocked about it. Like absolutely shocked. I really would. I would not. There's no chance he's getting great feedback. No chance. I mean, he's probably going to go day 3 at best. At best. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's like a borderline draftable priority free agent type. You know what this decision is a lot to me? Not quite the same, but a little similar. Kevin Austin. If he ends up going pro, this is a very Kevin Austin-ish decision.
But at least Kevin Austin waited till he was a senior to make that decision. Sure. Blake's a true junior. Like, if you're a true junior going to the NFL, you better be Joe Alt, where you're a dominant player. I mean, just because that's the one position, Ryan, where people still value age and experience.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is because the older you are, usually the stronger you are. And that's a position where that kind of matters. There's been so many things Blake has done that I just don't make. Like, why did he lose as much weight as he did? I'm all for you reshaping your body, but he lost the weight and kept it off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you looked at his arms this year, his arms got smaller. He didn't look as thick in the arms as he has in the past. Like, it's just a very strange deal. And he went from being a guy that I thought with good coaching and the right attitude and come back and maybe be a day 2 pick. And if you really peak, maybe a day 1 pick when Heastan was still here, to now it's like, I had somebody tell me the other day, he's got a better shot at going undrafted than he does at getting into day 2.
I said that the other day. Again, I haven't even seen any feedback.
Maybe it's you that told me that the other day.
It may have been. Like, honestly, Brian, like, I'm just looking at the film from this year. That's a borderline draftable football player right now. It just is.
And he never built on the Ohio State game.
Yeah.
That's my problem. Like, he had a pretty good game against Ohio State. Yeah. And it's like, if you think that film is going to save you from the rest of the film, you're mistaken.
It's also going to hurt him because not only did he keep that weight off, but also he might still project better inside a guard. And we have no idea what he looks like at guard. Like, zero idea what he looks like at guard. And he lost a bunch of weight. It's not like he's sitting there at 325, 330 pounds like he did a couple years ago. It would be a very perplexing move if he decides to leave.
Yep.
Maybe he's going to transfer instead. I have no idea, but I don't know.
Yeah. Now I've been told it's the NFL is what he's looking at. Like, that would actually make more sense. I still think it'd be a bad decision.
Yeah.
Go get some big payout from an NIL team. Like, okay, somebody's offering you a couple $1 million. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but whatever. That would make way more sense. He would make more money doing that than he would going to the NFL, in my opinion.
So many kids get really bad advice, man.
No,
really bad advice.
I have no problem with Blake. I think Blake's a good kid. I hope that I'm wrong about how NFL teams value him, but I just watch film and I don't have any clue how, because he's not a dominant run blocker and he's just kind of an okay pass blocker, and
I thought his pass blocking took a step back this year. Like, I did not think he was a great pass blocker this year.
It did. I would agree with that at the same position.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is NFL team's going to move you inside, and he's been very reluctant to that at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
from what I'm told, very reluctant to that.
Yeah, because I don't think his arms are going to measure that.
You have no hope of being a tackle in the NFL.
I don't think so. Oh man, shame. Football Hound. How many wide receivers is Notre Dame looking at in the portal?
Minimum 1, up to 2.
Probably
I think is the goal right there. Yeah. Let's see here. Here's kind of along those lines, Ryan. Here's a good one.
Yeah. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker. Thank you, Josh. If we do get Riley Leonard, any thoughts of wide receivers that may come because of him that are not in the portal now?
Well, I don't know that there's any guys that are going to jump in the portal to, like, they're perfectly happy where they are, and then all of a sudden Riley Leonard jumps in the portal and they say, I'm going to play for Riley Leonard. I don't see that. Are there some guys in the portal now that are going to look at Notre Dame because they get Riley Leonard? Sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I can bet you that Riley Leonard's already building relationships with some receivers, kind of in sort of a wherever I go, come with me,
sure,
kind of mode. So certainly see that, but I don't think a kid's going to jump into the portal just because Riley Leonard came to Notre Dame or goes to Auburn or goes to Texas A&M, whatever.
Right.
I don't see that unless it's like a Duke kid, but I don't know that any of those kids are like the kid that I like the kid Catalan. I like him as not Catalan. That's the kid from Texas, Calhoun. I always get those two kids' last names mixed up. I think he's a good player. And if Notre Dame needed a slot, I'd say, yeah, I'd look at that guy. He's a nice little slot player. They don't need that. That's the problem.
Yeah, they don't need that at all.
So, like, if Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison weren't here or something, and, Chris Tyree's gone, yeah, I'd look at him. Nice little slot player, help with a transition to KK Smith or whoever. But that's the last thing Notre Dame needs is another slot.
Yes.
Absolute last thing.
Receivers, man.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. All right. Let's go to here.
Right. We had Archer 452. If you were making the decisions, would you take a portal quarterback for depth, or is a guy out there that you think is a legit upgrade over the roster and would likely start? Man, Archer, you need to go back to our shows over the last week and a half, man. This has been a cool conversation.
Pretty simple. I'm Notre Dame needed to go to the portal no matter what. Depth was the most likely option. unless you could find a dude, I think Riley Leonard's a dude.
Yeah.
To me, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in there that could maybe help Notre Dame in 2024. Could Dylan Gabriel help Notre Dame in 2024? Sure. Would I go after Dylan Gabriel? Absolutely not, because he is not good enough to stunt the growth of the players that are coming behind. Some other guys just aren't good fits. To me, Riley Leonard's the one guy I look at and say, that's worth it.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
I agree.
Worth it.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that I'm not opposed to letting Kenny Minchie, Steve Angeli, CJ Carr fight for the starting spot and just getting a depth piece. But I do think Riley Leonard, if healthy and used correctly, developed properly, I think he could be a star. I really do. I think he could be a star because 2022 version is great. If you get 2022 version for Notre Dame this next year from the running and passing perspective, you're good, man. You're going to be a good football team. But if he takes a step forward from that, we're talking about a really good quarterback. So I would be open for that.
Agree. I had another question that says, and I can't find it, but it was, how does the receiver room affect Riley Leonard's decision? And my answer is like, guys, even with the guys that Notre Dame lost, they still have more talent at receiver than he had at Duke.
That's very true.
Yep. So Jimmy Page, I'm not reading that super chat, buddy. I appreciate it, but I'm not putting that on the show.
I know what it was. I saw a flash up. Yeah.
Here we go. This is a good one by Chief Brody. I like this one.
Chief says, how important is it that the hire works out for Marcus Freeman? Can he afford another season like 2023 was in terms of the passing game next season?
No, you can't have the inconsistency that Notre Dame had in the pass game next year. No, I mean, is it end all be all for Marcus Freeman? No, but you get to the point in time, Ryan, where even if something isn't necessarily like a make or break, end all be all, you start getting to the point where the trends are such that you're going to have a hard time recovering from it, and it's just the beginning of the end, so to speak.
Sure.
And at least it could be. And you're just kind of like year 3, you've got to start showing some growth. I mean, I've talked about this before. Overall, there's some really good moments in the pass game for Notre Dame this year the kids are going to look at. I mean, they threw 28 touchdown passes, almost 3. They'll be over 3,000 yards by the time the season's over. It's okay. It's not great. They, started off great early in the year, and then you finished well with some big games late. But then in the middle, there was a lot of bad. And then you have a chance to really finish with 3 of your last 4 games being really good passing games because you're playing a Stanford team that has one of the worst pass defenses, and you can't throw the football because your quarterback's turning it over, not making good reads. So yeah, you've got to turn that around. Now, is it make or break? No. Is it important? Incredibly important.
Right.
And that's the thing, guys. Like when I look at this Mike Brown hire, you have to understand where we're coming from. And Ryan, if I'm speaking for the both of us, but if I speak incorrectly, correct me. We understand this has to be a great hire. This isn't, well, if he's not any good, you can go. No, they have to get this right. It's a must. You've got to get this receiver hire right, which is why I'm excited about it, because what they need is what we hear and see Mike Brown is really good at. Ryan said it earlier. You need, number one, above all else, a developer of wide receivers. This is a guy that has a 4 to 5 year track record of doing just that with talent that doesn't quite stack up to what he's going to have in Notre Dame. Now, Alec Pierce is actually a really athletic guy. So, I mean, but he'll have that in Cam Williams. He'll have that in Deion Colzie is a freak athletically in a lot of ways. That size, speed combination. He just has to learn to be a great player. Jaden Greathouse is an outstanding talent. Is he an elite athlete? No. Is he an elite receiver? He has a chance to be. Right? Jordan Faison is a very athletic player. There's a lot of talent to work with there. He's got to coach it up. They need that. So I think it's a very important hire. And so our praise comes with the thought that we are evaluating this this is a very important hire. And I'm still saying I think it's a very good hire of what we know. We'll see how it pans out. But I'm a lot more optimistic about this hire than I was about the Chancey Stuckey hire, about the Joe Rudolph hire. There's been other hires, and I'm like, I don't know about that one. This one, from everything I've learned, I love this hire. And as you all know, I'm really picky when it comes to wide receiver coaching. Very picky. So if I'm watching film of this, what I'm seeing, and I'm talking to people that I trust, and I'm telling you guys, I think this is going to be a really good hire. Like, that I've been convinced and at a position that's not easy to convince me of that hire. Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge because I think coaches are graded mostly by their adjustments. And we always think of that of like in game and then obviously in halftime adjustments, but adjustments happen after not making a great hire. Right. And we can sit here and blame Tommy Rees and his intel to why Chancey Stuckey between the wide receiver coach. Ultimately though, it's Marcus Freeman's program.
Correct.
He agreed to it. He advised it. Right. So ultimately it's about the next step that shows growth. If he now recovers and says, okay, made a mistake with Coach Stuckey, we got Coach Brown, and he ends up being a really good coach for you, then that shows growth as a head coach.
Absolutely. I need to get new glasses, Ryan.
I know a good place, man. Zenny online. I always get them from there.
I gotta get my subscription fixed because my scripts, these just aren't as clear as they used to be.
Gotcha. Don't expect Cam Williams to be ready versus A&M the way Greathouse was. Oh, sorry. Do you expect Cam Williams to be ready versus A&M the way Greathouse was? He could be.
Yeah, the way it said don't, but then yes, but in a different way.
Yep.
Because Jaden, I don't think Cam in year one is going to be quite as polished as Jaden Greathouse was. But Cam's not some just raw kid that doesn't know what he's doing either. Sure. I mean, I think Cam was coached pretty well in high school. I mean, just when you watch his growth from sophomore to junior year, Cam was coached pretty well, Ryan. Are there things that he has to learn that Jaden already knew coming in? Sure. I mean, because it's just a different animal. Austin Westlake's a different animal.
Yep.
But I got to give a lot of preps to his high school coaches because I think they did a pretty good job of teaching him how to play the game. And then also still doing athletic things with him, right? Like they put him in a wildcat. They'd run him on jets and reverses, but they didn't just let him be an athlete. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Like, yes, they used the fact he was a dynamic athlete to their advantage. They didn't just like say, hey, we're going to have you run jet sweeps, goes, and crossers all day. I mean, they taught him he evolved as a route runner. He evolved as a blocker. He evolved, ability, how to catch the football. There's a lot of things his game grew on. So props to them. So but the thing is he'll be able to get away with things athletically that like Jaden, especially Rico, couldn't get away with. I mean, look, I know everybody loves Rico Flores, but like anytime they played good corners, Rico struggled.
Yeah.
Because Rico doesn't have the dynamic athleticism. And the thing we said at the time is you're asking him to do things you should not be. This isn't a shot at Rico. They were asking Rico to do things they should not have been asking him to do against those players. Right. So it's more of that. It's not a shot at Rico. It was more of an indictment of Chancey Stuckey.
Right.
And so when you watch the weight game, why did he have a lot of success? Quick game, overs, crossers, you're scheming them open. It wasn't just go win on go routes against Louisville's corners who are way better than you and way older and way longer. So to me, but Cam can get away with some of those things. Cam, you can say, hey, just go freaking run a go route. You know what I mean? And it's he can, hey, go run a post route. Yes,
whatever.
Yes. So you can just athletically get away with things that even if he's not as far along, route package wise as Jaden Greathouse was or Rico Flores was, you can still play him. But I think that he is further along than maybe I thought he was going to be when he first committed.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to his hard work, but also a testament to his coaching staff, who's clearly done a good job coaching that kid up while also taking advantage of the fact that you can just do some athlete things with him, which, as we saw this year, Ryan, they did. They put him at Wildcat and just said, snap the ball to Cam and let Cam be the best athlete on the field. You know what I mean? And that's smart. I mean, it's good to do that.
That's called good coaching, giving your best player the ball.
Yes. But they didn't overdo it. You know what I mean? Like they didn't overdo that. They also still helped the kid develop as a player and props. I don't know who their coaches are. I don't know any of them, but I respect the job they did.
Takes a smart coach to know to not do too much and to just get your best football player the ball. That takes a good coach.
And it also takes a good coach to not get lazy and just rely on that.
Yes.
And just say, we're just going to snap the ball and hand it to him every time. So props to them.
Right. We had a question for Ray Holcraft. He said, good to see Kingston Viliamoasa as a 5-star. I believe that was on Rivals. Mm-hmm. How do you see him working into the defense next year? Do you see him as a high floor and high ceiling linebacker?
Yes. And yes, on the last part, Ryan. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I think that I think honestly, you could play him at will if you want. But I also think that long-term, he is the starting Mike for Notre Dame. That's what I believe, right? Like he is
6'3", already 230 pounds. He's got a clean frame too, where like I could see him being 240 plus pounds and maintaining his speed and athleticism. Kingston's a star, man. He's a star in the making. Tremendous senior season that he just had for St. John Bosco. Back-to-back 100-plus tackle seasons for one of the best defenses in all of high school football. Kingston's a star.
Ryan, you mentioned he's the future starting Mike linebacker. Here's my thing is if there's a scenario down the road where Drake Bowen and Kingston Viliama are your two best linebackers, I think Drake is the more natural transition to Will.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Little twitch here.
It's for me, it's not that I think he beats Drake out as much as I just think there's a world potentially where your two best inside linebackers are those two kids.
Yep.
And now I would say I think Jaden Osbury and Drake Bowen are not going to be the easiest guys to beat out, but you need a guy like Kingston if that's going to happen.
Yep.
Right. And so
I mean the depth is fantastic. I just would say like I love both of those kids, but would I be shocked if Kingston played himself into being a high volume guy as a true freshman? I wouldn't be shocked at all, man. He's been coached very well and he's physically advanced.
And here's the other thing too, Ryan, whoever he's behind, don't get hurt. Don't miss games because you will not have your job back when you get back.
You're going to get Wally pipped.
Yes.
You're going to get Wally pipped. Yep.
Don't get hurt.
Yep.
Don't get hurt. Or the guy next to you is like, oh, crap, he's going to start now. So now that when this guy comes back, they're going to move him to my position. You know what I mean?
Right.
He has that kind of potential. Real quick from T. Roy Jenkins, will you guys be coming to El Paso for the game? I will. I bought my ticket and my rented my hotel last night, so I'll be getting
nice down there. Mexican food while you're down there, man.
Getting down there on the 26th, and then covering all the stuff that week, and then we'll plan. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do, but we'll plan some IB get together. So if anyone's from down there and you have some ideas on sports bar type places or sports restaurants, kind of sporty where we can watch games and stuff, let me know. And we'll plan some out. But yeah, just if you're going to be down there, probably like a day or two before the game, 27th or 28th, we'll do something like that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Get some good tacos, man. Cilantro, onion, lime.
So to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of real tacos.
Oh man.
So I had someone, Ange and I went on a cruise a number of years ago, and we went to, I can't remember where it was Cabo, something like that, one of the beaches in Mexico, and she's like, let's get some tacos. And when they brought the taco tray out, I was like, that's not like, where's the cheese? Where's the lettuce? And they're like, what are you talking about?
Come on, man.
And Angela looked at me so ashamed because here's the thing, right? She grew up in Escondido in San Diego.
Right.
So like, she's like right on the border. So she knows exactly what a real taco is, not Taco Bell tacos. She looked at me just like, if I'd have known that before we got married, I would have had to rethink my answer to yes.
Oh,
when
man.
you asked me to marry
First
you.
time I had authentic tacos, it was an absolute game changer. Absolute game changer.
I just don't like them as much because you know me. If I like something, that's just kind of the way I like it. But
I'm very picky with tacos. Actually, I'm very picky with tacos.
Yeah. So anyway, we did have this question here. I was getting ready to take it off again.
Ken Pluta says, how much does Sam Hartman's relationship with Riley Leonard play into him looking at Notre Dame? Do you think we would be in the same spot with him without the connection? I think it helps. I would say it helps a lot. Yeah.
Would they still be in the same position? I don't know because that's not the reality.
Yeah.
Do I think that relationship? Yeah. I mean,
it definitely helps. Definitely helps.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can kind of see yourself in that situation, right? 1 year transfer from the ACC, and they probably had a previous relationship when he was at Wake and with him at Duke, and there's some similarities there, which I think help for sure. But I think Riley would have looked at Notre Dame regardless a little bit. But would the Sam Hartman relationship help? I 100% think that it did. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I gotta laugh sometimes, Ryan. At some of the takes. So we just had someone saying, I won't pull the person up because I just don't want to do that. But somebody just said they're responding to our Julian Fleming conversation. He goes, Fleming is a 5-star. Our slot guy is a lacrosse player. Like, first of all, come on, dude. Here's the deal. Jordan Faison this year as a true freshman played 6 games and he had 14 catches for 227 yards. And also had 22 yards rushing on 2 attempts. Julian Fleming, the 5-star, played in 12 games this year, also had 26 catches for 270 yards and no touchdowns. as a senior.
Right? As a senior, yeah.
So Jordan Faison has only 53 fewer yards than him, and he played 6 games.
His recruiting ranking 4 years ago does not
Irrelevant.
matter. Doesn't matter.
Irrelevant. I would not trade Jordan Faison for Julian Fleming for $1 million because I'm trying to win football games. I mean, come on now. Yeah. Ryan, somebody asked in the chat too, thoughts on the Peebles kid. To me,
from Duke?
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I just don't see the need.
He's explosive.
I don't see that. Like, they're going to be pretty deep inside next year. Like, you're going to have, if you have Riley Leonard and Howard Cross back, you're going to have Rubio back. You're going to have Onye back. You're going to have Heinisch back. Yeah. Plus, you've got Armo Mookum and Devin Houston kind of come along. Like, he's a good football player, and I like him. We talked about him when they were getting ready to play him because he was such a different player than the starters. We liked that combination because those two kids were like the big physical guys, and he'd kind of come off and
move,
be disruptive. And I just don't know that there's the need.
If that, no, I don't think there is. The only way I would have went to the portal for a defensive tackle is if it was a big dude inside, like I would have given like Thor Griffith from Harvard a look because he's 320 pounds and he's a dude, in my opinion. I would have given that a look. Peebles, like I could, all due respect, I could do some things that Peebles will do with Tyson Ford and Brendan Vernon next year, potentially even. Like I throw those guys that are in slightly undersized guys.
Especially if you still have Howard Cross.
Yeah.
Like if you'd have lost Mills and Cross, and I'd have been like, hey, I'm looking at that kid because I know he can play. Right. And he brings some of that explosiveness that you're kind of losing with Howard Cross leaving, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, he's a good football player, but not every good football player makes sense to be a guy you go in the portal for.
Right.
It's kind of like the quarterback conversation. He's just not a good enough player for me to stunt the development of the kids that are there. I mean, and dude, this is a kid that had 8.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks this year. He's a good football player.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like, I think you already got good football players there. I just do. But yeah, so I wouldn't go that route. I wouldn't go that route. Last few, Ryan, before we get out of here, we have one from my guy, Charlie Weiss's last belt loop.
Charlie says, how many wide receivers do you expect in the 2025 class? I'm glad that Mike Brown can go get his own guys in this class.
Yeah. Well, because they don't have any commits in the receiver group now, right? So, he's gonna have a chance to have a say. I won't even say names, but let's say there's a kid that Notre Dame was in a great position with, and he's like, yeah, just not feeling that kid. Then you're gonna take that into consideration. Absolutely. Right. Unless it's a guy that Jared Parker's like, no, sorry, because coordinators should always have some level of veto power.
Sure.
But also, if you don't trust a guy to recruit the guys he wants, you've got a different problem, in my opinion. So normally coaches they'll usually hey, you know what, I'll trust you. Let's go get the job done.
Yep.
Or it'll be like, hey, look, state your case, convince me why you're right or wrong. And if you respect the guy and he lays out a good pay, hey, I just got a great relationship with this kid. Okay, that's fine. Build one with this kid. This kid's a way better player. Build a relationship with him. But if you can sit there and convince me that this is the skill set, this is what I see. Once I get to coach this kid, I think he's going to do this, and this is the need and the fit. And you're like, okay, cool.
And Charlie, for the numbers, I would expect 3 as of now, but I would not be shocked if 4 ends up being the number. But we shall see if that changes.
Yep. All right. Last 2, Ryan, and then we're going to get out of here.
Okay. We had a super chat from Relly Q. Thank you so much. Hey, fellas, any quick thoughts on the progress and development of the offensive line this year and expectations for next season? Go Irish for now. Roll Tide. Boo. Don't let me see University of Michigan win anything.
I got to say Roll Tide too, man, because I just can't see. I can't root for Michigan. I just can't. I'm
just not going to watch the game, to be honest, but I'm just kidding. Obviously.
Ryan, I'll be honest with you. Until we saw Schrouth and Craig in the last 2 games, I was very disappointed with the play of the offensive line because they never built, like they were okay early in the year.
Yeah.
They did some nice things against Central Michigan because I thought they did really well against that really athletic kid that Central Michigan had up the middle.
Yeah.
I thought they handled him pretty well. And then they came out and I thought they played really well against Ohio State. So they're going to take off from here. And then the next week was like one of the worst offensive line performances I've ever seen from Notre Dame offensive line. It was just awful. Yeah. And then they went out the next week against Louisville, and it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then they just, USC, they were solid. I thought they were pretty good in pass pro against USC because that was a good pass, but they were just kind of solid. Pitt, they were good, but nothing special. Clemson, they were good in the first half, terrible in the second half. Not good at pass pro the whole game. They at least ran the ball in the first half to a degree. But if you go back and look at some of those runs from Audric Estimate, he's making dudes miss in the backfield and then running for 20 yards. They never got better. And it wasn't until they put the two young kids in the lineup that you started to see them move people off the ball with any consistency. And so, that's where some of my optimism comes from next year is just watching those two kids play. And then, potentially you have maybe Rocco and Coogan battle it for that other job. But I was disappointed by the development of the offensive line. What are my expectations for next season? I need to see him in the spring first because I got to see what some of these guys look like. I need to know where Charles Jagasol is going to play.
Yes.
That's one for me. If you're telling me that he's going to have a shot to play at tackle, then I feel a little better.
I think the 2023 class is going to be a big indicator of what the long-term impact of Joe Rudolph is going to be, right? Because he kind of got thrown into that class, obviously, with them being on campus, and he didn't recruit that class, obviously, but a lot of talent there, man. I mean, even outside of Charles Jagasaw, you have Sullivan Absher, you have Joe Otting, you have some really talented players in that 2025 offensive line class. 2023 offensive line class, Sam Pendleton, Christopher Tarrick. So I think that development, this jump first year to second year is going to be my big indicator of yep, he can coach, or he's maybe not quite the guy for the job in Notre Dame, but we shall see.
Agree. And then we had, and thank you for the super chat again. I know that Ryan thanked you before, but I wanted to thank you again. And then here's the last one.
Pete Weber said, just an off-topic question about collegiate journalism. Do journalists covering Notre Dame typically have the same sources, or is it typically more exclusive for each reporter?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, there are certain people that talk to everybody, and then there's certain people that talk to a couple people, and then there's some people that only talk to. I mean, we'll hear things because we'll have a unique relationship with a parent, a player, a coach, a high school coach, somebody in the back office that maybe they don't talk to anybody else because they trust us to not go share everything. And then we'll share stuff when we're allowed to share, and we'll protect certain people and do those type of things. And I'm sure there's people that Tim Priester talks to that I don't talk to. I'm positive of that. And I know that there's people that I talk to that he doesn't talk to. So everyone always kind of has some of their own exclusive sources, but with a lot of things, there's also people that everybody talks to. I mean, I know there was a former coach in Notre Dame that I had a great relationship with, but I know he talked to everybody. He and I would have some private conversations that were different, but it wasn't stuff that I could report, because they were personal private conversations. But as far as news in the team, I kind of knew he talked to everybody. And so that's why when things break, you kind of see a little bit of just everybody saying the same thing.
Right.
But no, it's definitely not. And I think I know where this question's coming from. We definitely have sources that I'm confident are unique to us, or at least they're more open with us maybe than there are other people.
Yeah.
But it's not like a million. I mean, there's just people that everybody talk to. And some people just aren't willing to report certain things that other people know. And that's true for everybody. I mean, there's things that other people reported that I just didn't feel comfortable reporting because I didn't think it was the sources were close. I knew who their source was. It was the same one I had, but I didn't think it was close enough to the situation that I felt that was a reliable source. I know there's things we've reported in the past that other people I think knew or had some idea of, but they decided not to report it. And that's all. That's okay. I mean, that's all part of the decision process you have to make as an individual entity. There's things Ryan and I have talked about. Look, we're not putting that out. Other people are saying it. I understand all that, but we're going to make the decision to not to put that out. And yeah. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But yeah, it's always different. It's always different, which is why you'll see some people report things that and some people report things that just you're not supposed to report that. We all knew that. We're going to respect that, and this person shouldn't have put that out there.
Right.
That happens from time to time as well. So yeah, that's it. So, and then this last comment from 99 Pros became one. I appreciate you, man. Fast, slow, or anywhere in between. IB boards are the best. Nice. The IB board is the best. Excuse me. I appreciate that very, very much.
Very much appreciated. And we appreciate everyone for stopping by today here on the Notre Dame football mailbag. Before you go, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell at the bottom of the screen if you're listening to us on YouTube. and any podcast platform you frequent. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Make sure y'all, boards@irishbreakdown.com. We are less than 3 weeks away from National Signing Day, so you get your latest recruiting intel and just topics over there. The team, obviously, with not only the bowl game coming up, Notre Dame kind of trying to end the season off on the right note, moving forward against Oregon State, but also transfer portal is open. Players will be leaving. There'll be rumors about who is coming, who's going to sit for the bowl game, who's not going to sit. Make sure you stay tapped in at boards@irishbreakdown.com. You can also get the free content over at irishbreakdown.com as well. So for Brian, I am also Ryan. We want to thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.